Chapter 15. The deal was sealed. Ji Ling was officially staying in the residence of Yun. Such a huge residence, only the two of you? Ji Ling said. It's too quiet. I'll just stay here. It's inconvenient for a man and a woman to stay alone under the fields. It's best for Miss Ji to stay in an inn. Yin Yang covered his bruised right eye. This was the price he had to pay for teasing her earlier. I want to tell my sisters that you have an affinity for mystical beasts. All right, which room will you be staying in? Yin Yang sighed as he ate. On the opposite side, young Miss Ji watched Yin Yang eat with a shocked expression, her eyes frozen. You ate so much by yourself? Ji Ling watched as Yin Yang ate the mountain of mystical beast meat with such grace and calmness. She felt uneasy. This was 40 caddies? 50 caddies? Or, hurry up and eat. Lao Mei grabbed a big piece and stuffed it into his mouth. It'll be gone in a while. Ji Ling was dumbfounded. Yin Yang had no interest in the competition between these young ladies. But the competition between these young masters is interesting. Yin Yang's gaze darkened. I want to go against the Four Seasons Tower now, but I have nowhere to start. I have the will, but I don't have the strength. I might as well start with these noble families. Yin Yang's eyes shone brighter as he thought about it. I can adjust if the direction is wrong, but I can't do nothing. A strange glint flashed across Yin Yang's eyes as he thought about what to do. Yin Yang thought to himself, if it's a mystical beast tournament, there should be quite a number of young masters here by now. Ji Ling was pleased with herself. Who asked you to anger me, to chase me away? You still have to help me in the end. She did not know that Yin Yang had already used her as a springboard. Not only was he plotting against her, he was also plotting against all the young masters from the noble families who were about to arrive. In fact, from that day onward, even these families began to be in turmoil. Yin Yang could have resolved Ji Ling's so-called threat with a single sentence. It doesn't matter. No matter who you tell, I only need to ensure that you lose. However, how could Yin Yang do that? If it were not for Ji Ling's arrival, Yin Yang would not have thought of this place. However, Ji Ling's arrival had suddenly opened up a wide path in front of Yin Yang. External force. External forces. External forces that even his enemies wouldn't think of were the ones that posed a real threat. It looked like he would have to explore Tiantang City more often. Tomorrow, let's go pick a mystical beast, Yin Yang said. All right. Late at night, in Marshal Qiu Jianhan's residence, the old marshal was in his study, staring at a painting on the wall in a daze. It was a battlefield. 9 different colors were wreaking havoc on the battlefield. The earth was churning, thunder and lightning flashed. On one side, flames soared to the sky. On one side, there were boundless waves. On one side, there were howling winds. On one side, there were clouds filling the sky. On the other side, 9 supremes. You 9 little fellows. The old marshal's eyes were moist. You've always been careful. Why are you this time? The portrait was silent. The 9 masked men were still standing on the battlefield. The old marshal heaved a long sigh. Suddenly, a shrill howl rang out in the sky. A loud shout came from outside. Who is it? Then the entire residence was thrown into chaos. A glint of sword light flew in from the courtyard wall hundreds of feet away. With a loud boom, the roof of a side room in the marshal's residence was smashed to pieces and flew into the sky. With a flash of white light, it was inserted into the door frame. There was a piece of paper on it, making a flapping sound. A chilling voice rang out. Qiu Jianhan, Wu Wenyuan, we'll let this go, we'll give you face. However, one should know when to adapt to the circumstances. If you continue to be stubborn, be careful that even the people behind you won't be able to save your old life. With a flash of sword light, a few guards grunted at the same time. The sword light had already soared into the sky, carrying with it a faint shadow. Below, countless guards flew in pursuit. The sword light turned in the air, and a rain of swords rained down. The light was dazzling, like an exploding meteor. The guards were shocked, swinging their swords to protect themselves. Where the sword light disappeared, only the galaxy could be seen, and the moon in the sky could be seen. The person in the sky had disappeared without a trace. Qiu Jianhan had been standing at the door since the beginning. His expression was calm. His gaze was arrogant as he stood with his arms behind his back. Let me see it. The paper fell into Qiu Jianhan's hands. When he opened it, there was only one sentence written in fresh blood. The 9 Supremes are dead. There is no grudge. Bang! Qiu Jianhan tore the paper into pieces and hollered. The revenge of the 9 Supremes is irreconcilable. His voice was fierce, traveling far and wide, causing the air to buzz. Ha ha ha! An eerie voice came from afar. You refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit. Just you wait. There was no more sound after that. Old Marshal Qiu howled into the sky, his eyes glaring at the sky. I won't rest until I'm dead. Half of the capital city was shaken to the core. The old marshal was speechless. I've only investigated a few of the masterminds and you're already so impatient? Who's going to pay for the 9 Supremes' deaths? Yin Yang's house was not far from the residence of Marshal. The old marshal's deafening roar that was infused with pure mystical qi had shaken the entire capital city. Of course, Yin Yang had heard it loud and clear. He sat up with a grunt, a mystical glow flashing in his hands as he scribbled a few words quickly. The words glowed with mystical qi and vanished into thin air. Investigate the night incident at the residence of Marshal. Early morning. The mystical beast market. Yin Yang was dressed in a deep purple robe, strolling leisurely. Although he looked like he was unwilling to come here, his grace and elegance did not diminish at all. He was surrounded by shops. The mystical beast trading market was completely different from the pet trading market. It was very clean, and there was no smell at all. Furthermore, the mystical beasts traded here were all second level and above mystical beasts. Mystical beasts of second level and above had already gained some form of intelligence and could not stand being unclean. Jiling followed behind Yun Yang, playing with the 1,000 illusion monkey that was perched on Yun Yang's shoulder. She looked carefree. However, Yun Yang knew that this girl was not someone to be trifled with. The fact that she could threaten him and pinpoint his weakness proved that this was not something an ordinary person could do. Right now the 1,000 illusion monkey looked harmless. The horns on its head had been retracted by some unknown method, and its tail had turned into a single tail. It looked just like an ordinary young monkey. Along the way, its bloodshot eyes darted left and right, but no matter what it saw that attracted its attention, it refused to leave Yin Yang's embrace. Hiss hiss hiss, an inexplicable sound rang out. When he passed by the first shop, a few golden statue-like snakes in the cages at the shop's entrance suddenly raised their heads and hissed at Yun Yang, flicking their tongues at him and banging their bodies against the cages, as if they were desperate to get out of it. Yin Yang's heart sank. Although it was not a bad thing to attract mystical beasts, it was definitely not a good thing to expose it often. He had to find a way to conceal this ability. Jiling's eyes shone brightly. Indeed, although Yin Yang was not cultivating, the unique scent of freshness on him, and the air of vitality, that was beneficial to mystical beasts could not be concealed. Gold Thread Crimson Viper. Yin Yang pursed his lips and continued walking, as if he did not see anything. Gold Thread Crimson Viper was poisonous, a third-level mystical beast. However, Yin Yang was not interested in it at all. Next was the second shop, then the third. As long as Yin Yang walked in, he would cause a commotion among the mystical beasts. Yin Yang pondered in his heart. The criteria for selecting a mystical beast were not low. First, it had to be more obedient than being tamed. Second, it had to have a rapport with its master. Third, it had to be taught new abilities. Fourth, it had to be dependent on its master. Furthermore, it had to be no more than 5th level. This meant that there were 5 criteria. Among the mystical beasts that did not exceed 5th level, there were not many who could fulfill all these criteria. In addition, from Yin Yang's point of view, there should be another condition. It had to be suitable for women to be tamed. This condition might seem insignificant, but it was actually very important. It was Yin Yang's first time coming to the mystical trade market. He had never been to such a place before. The low-level mystical beast meat he ate had been bought by Lao Mei himself, so Yin Yang did not have to do it himself. Now that he was here, it was bustling with activity. There was an endless stream of people coming and going. It was like a huge market. In front of him, there were a few people dressed in snow-white robes waving their folding fans. talking loudly as they walked over without a care in the world. Yin Yang almost laughed when he saw them. They were familiar faces. Young Master Ma and young Master Qin, with their respective attendants, were looking to the left and right with smiles on their faces. Most of their gazes were not on the mystical beasts, but on the passing ladies instead. This young Master Ma was actually carrying a beast cub in his arms? Her sparkling eyes were innocently looking around her surroundings. Yin Yang's eyes lit up. "Hey, young lady, I think I've seen you somewhere before." Young Master Ma stopped a lady who was passing by, deep in thought. "Where was it again? Let me think." The lady spat and turned around with a look of disgust, breaking out of the crowd in another direction. Hey, don't go. I remember now. Why are you leaving? How depressing. Why are all the young ladies like this now? How boring." Young Master Ma looked dejected. Young lady, when I saw you today, I suddenly had an idea and composed a poem." Don't go. Young Master Qin's face was full of defeat. "I'll let you see my literary talent." AI. The two beasts spread their arms and shrugged their shoulders, unconcerned as they continued to search for their next target. Yin Yang almost laughed out loud. These two bastards. They were worthy of being called popinjays. These two fellows are so annoying. Jiling frowned as she looked at the two fellows. As they spoke, young Master Qin and young Master Ma turned their heads, and saw Jiling. Jiling's body was turned sideways, so her face could not be seen. Only an infinitely beautiful figure. In an instant, the eyes of the two animals suddenly lit up, and they rushed over with 3 steps at the same time. These two fellows were so lustful that they did not notice Yin Yang standing on the side. They surrounded Jiling from both sides. Young lady, you look so familiar." Cough. Yin Yang coughed. If he did not stop them, these two fellows would probably be beaten to death by Jiling. Young Master Yin?" Young Master Ma turned his head and called out as if he had seen a ghost. On the other side, young Master Qin, who had been ingratiating himself with Jiling, turned his head as well. His expression turned bitter as well as he called out, "Brother Yin." Ha. It's a small world indeed." Yin Yang snorted. "You two seem to be having a good time." Young Master Ma nodded and bowed with a smile. "Brother Yin must be joking. No matter how much fun we have had, we can't compare to Brother Yin. Traveling with a beauty. What a hero." Young Master Qin put on a smile as well. Yes, Brother Yin is really lucky with women." At this moment, Jiling turned her head around with a frosty expression and glared daggers at young Master Qin and young Master Ma. Just as young Master Qin and young Master Ma were about to put on a smile, they suddenly held it in. Their faces froze. This lady had such a beautiful figure, such an outstanding temperament, and the cool immortal qi that almost intoxicated anyone who looked at her. But why was her face so ugly? Chapter 16. Popinjay. Shameless. Jiling spat out the words coldly and walked away with her head held high. Young Master Ma finally managed to catch his breath. His gaze towards Yin Yang was filled with awe. "Brother Yin. Haha, your hobbies are indeed different from ours." Cough. Young Master Qin also had a look of pity on his face. What a pity. Truly a pity. What was there to pity? Of course, it was a pity for that devilish figure. That temperament that made people yearn for it with just one look. Yin Yang almost laughed out loud as he pointed at the cub in young Master Ma's arms. "Brother Ma, what is this?" Young Master Ma laughed and said, "It's just a lightning cat. I thought it was fun, so I bought it." It's mainly because it's snow white, good-looking, obedient and well-behaved." Haha. An ordinary lightning cat costs 1,500 taels of silver. But this one costs 2,000 taels of silver. So expensive. I'll buy it to study it. Yin Yang was speechless for a moment. So this fellow had bought it because it was too expensive. It seemed like he had nowhere to spend his money. It seemed like he had extorted too little last time. Besides, you said it was lightning cat? Yin Yang was exasperated. How could this be a lightning cat? Lightning cats were only 3rd-level mystical beasts. But this one was still in its infancy, and had already reached 3rd level. How could this be a lightning cat? How could he not know that this fellow had gotten lucky? "This cat is not bad indeed," Yin Yang said. Brother Yin, do you like it? Young Master Ma was overjoyed. He had been worrying about how to flatter Yin Yang every day, but now he felt like he had discovered a new continent. Yin Yang had something he liked. He shoved the kitten into Yin Yang's arms and said, "Please accept it, Brother Yin." Yin Yang was speechless. Looking at the little creature that had been shoved into his arms, he scratched his head, not knowing what to say. This was definitely not a lightning cat. It should be an unknown mystical beast. Besides, it was definitely not a 5th level mystical beast. It looked like it had already reached 3rd level before it was even a month old. People would believe it if it was said to be an 8th or 9th level pinnacle mystical beast. To be able to buy something like this with 2,000 silver taels was like burning incense from the heavens. Even their ancestral graves would be filled with smoke. And this foppish Ma who had spent so much effort to buy it actually threw it out. How embarrassing. Yin Yang looked embarrassed. After all, it's Brother Ma's beloved item. Young Master Ma laughed heartily. What's wrong with that? It was just a cat. Take it, it can still live for a few more days. I'll buy it. And in a few more days, I'll get a golden scaled snake, and we'll have a dragon and tiger fight. A battle between a dragon and a tiger. Sweat dripped from Yin Yang's forehead. He really wanted to ask, if I gave you a small dragon, would you also be able to stew it? Other than eating, what else do you know? If so, I shall kindly accept it. Yin Yang said hypocritically, do you want me to give you 2,000 silver taels? Young Master Ma waved his hand imposingly. Young Master Yin, what are you saying? If you give me money for such a small matter, aren't you scolding me? What kind of friendship do we have? Forget about a cat, even if you wanted my wife. Of course, you wouldn't want my wife, but even if you... Yin Yang cut him off exasperated. Thank you. Let's not talk about anything else. Young Master Ma, I owe you a favor. Young Master Ma beamed with delight. A favor from Young Master Yin. Didn't that mean? Hearing this, Young Master Qin's eyes were as wide as bells. With a swoosh he came over. Young Master Yin, I have another one here. Yin Yang looked over and saw a naive black bear cub in the arms of the guard behind Young Master Qin. It was struggling in the guard's arms, whimpering. A 3rd level mystical beast. Waving his hand, he said, I don't want yours, I already want this one. I'm already embarrassed. It's nothing. Young Master Qin had already shoved the black bear cub into Yin Yang's arms. We're brothers, don't stand on ceremony. It's good that you can have it. Yin Yang hugged the black bear cub, feeling dizzy. I want this cat because it has potential. Why are you shoving this bear into me? This cat, where did you buy it? Yin Yang pretended to ask casually. Do you have more? Yes, many more. Young Master Ma's words made Yin Yang overjoyed. Such mystical beasts were hard to come by, but there were so many of them. That was great. Over there, counting from here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 9th or 10th house, a big basket full of these kittens. Just as Young Master Ma finished speaking, he felt a shadow flash in front of him. Yin Yang was already gone. Where is he? Young Master Ma scratched his head. Where did he go? I don't know. Young Master Qin lowered his head, looking disheartened. Yin Yang had left, but he had left the black bear cub behind. Yin Yang did not accept his gift. Young Master Qin felt that the world was filled with malice. Why did you accept Ma's cat, but not my bear? My bear is at least much bigger than his cat, isn't it? Even if I wanted to cook, I could make a few more dishes. Young Master Ma was very pleased. Humming a tune, he said, Brother Qin, let me treat you to a drink to celebrate, waha. Your father is not free. Young Master Qin glared at him and turned to leave. Yin Yang's footsteps looked slow, like he was taking a stroll in the park, but his speed had increased. In a flash, he was already hundreds of feet away. He sprinted like a whirlwind, not forgetting to cover the kitten in his arms with his clothes. If he were to be recognized by an expert, he would not be able to protect himself with his cultivation base that had yet to recover. Hence, young Master Yin took big strides, carrying the white kitten in his left hand and a little golden monkey on his shoulder. He was as fast as lightning. Ji Ling, who was behind him, had no idea what was going on. She ran after him in a daze, wondering what had gotten into Yin Yang. He was fine just now, why did he suddenly go crazy? Didn't you say that you would choose a pet for me? Why does it seem like something is wrong now? Yun Yang had no eyes for anything else. He recognized the shop the moment it came into view. There was no other reason, but because there was a large bamboo basket in front of the shop. There was a sign on the outside of the basket, Rare Mystical Beast Lightning Cat Pup. Inside the basket, a bunch of snow-white kittens were climbing up and down energetically. Yun Yang sprinted over at the speed of a 100-meter sprint. Just as he did so, he could not help but be dumbfounded. Because in front of the big bamboo basket, there were already a few young people standing there, stretching out their hands to tease the kitten. Jiling saw them at the same time that Yun Yang saw them. Jiling's expression changed. With a swoosh, she turned a corner and disappeared into the distance. These people were dressed in brocade robes. Their gaze is sharp, and they exuded an inexplicable aura. Although they did not speak or move, the pride and grace that were ingrained in their bones could not be concealed. He did not recognize any of them. It was because he did not recognize them that Yun Yang knew who they were at once. There was no need for him to announce their names. Which young master in Tiantang City did Yun Yang not know? Jiling had mentioned that the young masters and young ladies of the noble families would participate in the annual Mystical Beast Tournament. This year, it would be held in Tiantang City. These people before him were obviously the young masters of the noble families. These fellows knew what was good and what was bad. Yun Yang's heart skipped a beat, but his expression did not change as he moved closer. There were indeed 3 kittens that stood out from the others in the basket. They looked the same, their bodies snow-white, but their eyes were a faint turquoise blue. Although they were small in size, there was a hint of arrogance in them, as if they did not care to be with the other kittens. Yun Yang took a closer look and saw that the other 3 were not as well developed as the one in his arms. At best, they had not even reached the 2nd level. However, it was already a rare occurrence. The 3 young masters were puzzled as well. These kittens are strange, one of them in blue said. That's right. Did they eat something good? One of them in white said. They're so small, but they're already at the 2nd level. It seems like. One of them in green said. It's a pity that they're only lightning cats. The youth in blue clicked his tongue regretfully. Even if they had some chance encounter, or if the mother cat had eaten some heaven and earth treasure to cause this, it's only a lightning cat. Yun Yang heaved a sigh of relief. Only a lightning cat? It looked like these fellows did not know them either. This made things much easier. Yun Yang thought about it, and felt that it was normal. If it were not for 8th Brother Supreme Wind's illustrated history of the mystical beasts of the mountains and seas, that he would read with relish when he was free, he would not have known them either. After all, they were too rare. Although they existed in legends, not many people had actually seen them. Those who had seen them had basically grown up to be ferocious. What was more, there were 2 brilliant concealment techniques on these little fellows. These little white kittens are not bad. The little golden monkey on Yun Yang's shoulder squatted down excitedly, tucking in the other kitten that was already in his arms. At the same time, he exuded the aura of the endless divine art and sent it into the kitten's body. The kitten curled up comfortably in his arms and stopped moving. At the same time, 3 weak bursts of the endless divine art had also entered the 3 kittens in the bamboo basket, releasing a sense of comfort. The 3 kittens that had lifted their heads to crawl towards Yun Yang laid down lazily and stopped moving. No matter who these people were, no matter what his original plan was, he had to get his hands on these little fellows. Yun Yang steeled his heart. Chapter 17. While Yun Yang was doing all this, he did not notice that the 3 young masters' expressions changed at the same time when they saw the little golden monkey on his shoulder. Their gazes were filled with uncertainty as they scrutinized Yun Yang carefully, their gazes lingering on the little golden monkey. Shopkeeper. Yun Yang stood up and asked directly, "How much do these kittens cost?" The shopkeeper was overjoyed, his chubby face beaming like a flower. "Young master has a good eye. These are the precious lightning cat's cubs. I spent a lot of money on them." "Cut the nonsense. Just tell me how much one is." Yun Yang pretended to be impatient. "This young master is buying them as a gift for a beauty to play with. I don't lack money." The shopkeeper was overjoyed. A popinjay had just bought one. And now there was another one. These people were all super fat sheep. He asked carefully. I wonder which one young master has taken a fancy to? Yin Yang stood straight and put on a look of wealth, pointing casually. This one, this one, this one, this one. If the price is right, I'll take them all. He pointed a total of 5 times. Other than the 3 special ones, there were 2 real lightning cats. The plump shopkeeper was overjoyed. If young master wants them all, I can give you a discount. Wait. The young master in blue said slowly. Brother, we saw these kittens first. Yin Yang turned his head. What does this young master mean? The young man in blue said slowly. It's simple. I want these kittens. Although he did not know that these kittens were extraordinary, he felt a little uncomfortable when he saw Yin Yang wanting to buy them all. He wanted to do the right thing subconsciously. He had a vague feeling that this was an opportunity. If he missed it, he might regret it. The young man in blue had always believed in his intuition. Although he did not understand why a small lightning cat's cub was qualified to make him regret, he still followed his intuition. Yin Yang chuckled and said, May I ask this, brother? You said that you saw them first. Then have you asked for the price? The blue-clothed young man's face turned sinister as he shook his head. I didn't ask for the price. Yin Yang smiled. May I ask if you've paid the deposit? The blue-clothed young master frowned and said, He did not ask for the price. How could he have already paid the deposit? I see. Yin Yang hummed in acknowledgement and said faintly, It seems like this young master means that you didn't want to buy it initially, but when you saw that I wanted to buy it, you suddenly wanted to buy it. Is this how it works? The blue-clothed youth was momentarily speechless. That was the truth, and it was even more so in the eyes of others. The 3 of you have been standing here and commenting for a long time without buying anything. Obviously, you have no intention of buying. However, when the purple-robed young master came over to ask for the price and wanted to take it away, you guys interfered and said that you wanted to buy it, and that you were the one who saw it first. If this wasn't deliberately causing trouble, then what was? The 3 fellows' gazes turned sharp at the same time, staring at Yin Yang's face like 6 blades. Yin Yang felt a prickling sensation on his face, as if a sharp blade had been pressed against his skin. The blue-clothed youth's tone was light and slow, but it carried a strong sense of oppression. This young master's words are a little unreasonable. If I didn't want to buy it, why would I stand here and watch for so long? The reason I didn't buy it immediately was because I wanted to choose. He paused and said, Besides, even if I didn't want to buy it initially, but this young master suddenly wants to buy it now, it means that I'm going to buy it. If this young master sees it first, it naturally belongs to this young master. If you saw it first, it belongs to you? Yin Yang smiled. Of course, the blue-clothed youth snorted. Yin Yang laughed and said, May I ask if this young master knows about the unrivaled beauty, Shui Lanqing? He had actually changed the topic so abruptly. The blue-clothed youth's pupils shrunk as he asked, What do you mean? Yin Yang said leisurely, Shui Lanqing was the publicly acknowledged unrivaled beauty 30 years ago. Before she met her husband, the unrivaled expert Ling Xiaozui, there were countless people who saw her first, but she still married her husband in the end. The blue-clothed youth's expression changed. Yin Yang said faintly, If I had seen Shui Lanqing back then, I think I would have seen her first as well, although she might not have liked me. However, can I say that Shui Lanqing is mine if I saw her first? The blue-clothed youth's expression grew even uglier. Ling Xiaozui and Shui Lanqing, they were the publicly acknowledged immortal couple of Tianxian continent. Among them, Ling Xiaozui was a legendary figure, publicly acknowledged as the unrivaled expert in the world. The divine dragon soared in the mortal realm, a pot and a sword soared to the heavens. There were countless people in the 4 seas and 8 wastelands, the world's heroes revered above all. Yin Yang had actually used this figure as an example. It was truly audacious of him. According to Yin Yang's usual calm temperament, if these kittens were not too important, Yin Yang would occasionally take a step back when facing such aristocratic children. He did not think that it would be embarrassing for him. After all, there were many strong people in this world, and many grudges stemmed from trivial matters. Yin Yang had never been one to provoke such trouble. However, for the sake of these kittens, Yin Yang had to fight for them. It was not because of Ji Ling's bet. It was because these so-called lightning cat cubs were truly remarkable existences. Once they grew up, they would be a terrifying aid. Such an opportunity might only come once in a lifetime. How could Yin Yang not fight to the end? Besides, if he did not fight, how could he achieve the effect he wanted? This was an opportunity. The blue-clothed youth glared at Yin Yang for a long time before he said faintly, "If that's the case, let's start the bidding. The highest bidder wins. You can't say that I'm bullying you, can you?" He looked like he was about to explode in anger, but for some reason, he forcefully suppressed his anger. Yin Yang said faintly, "The fact that you can say this means that you're confident that you're richer than me, that you can afford to pay more than me. It may seem fair, but it's just a change of method, from bullying others with force to crushing others with money. If that's the case, what fairness is there to speak of?" The blue-clothed youth sucked in a deep breath. "I'm determined to get these kittens. You're determined to get them, and I'm determined to get them as well. We all have the same temperament. There's nothing we can do about it. But if that's the case, do you dare to make a bet with me?" Yin Yang pondered for a moment before saying, "We'll use an absolutely fair method. How about we accept our losses?" The blue-clothed youth said, "Bet? How so?" Yin Yang said, "Let's bet with these kittens. This is the first time we've seen these lightning cat cubs. Let's bet who these kittens will follow. We can take out anything that can attract the mystical beasts, be it food or spiritual medicine. To attract these kittens, let them choose their own master. What do you say?" The blue-clothed youth squinted his eyes. Looking at the kittens crawling energetically in the big bamboo basket, the look in his eyes changed. Yin Yang could acutely feel 7 to 8 deific senses scanning his body at the same time at this very moment. Up, down, left and right. These deific senses carried a sense of exploration. Yin Yang could even feel the scent of a treasure-hunting rat from them. He understood immediately. These fellows and their followers were using their deific senses to detect if he had any treasures that could attract mystical beasts. He stood calmly and said with a smile, "Why, young master, do you dare not make a bet?" From the beginning, he had never thought of making peace with the other party. Just by looking at these people's posture, they were the kind of spoiled young masters who thought that they were above the clouds. On the basis of competition where both parties wanted something, the possibility of not falling out was close to zero. However, if they did fall out, he would have to fight for enough benefits since he had already offended them. Now it was time to reel in the net. How could the core think tank of the 9 Supremes be such an impulsive person? The blue-clothed youth wore an enigmatic smile on his face as he looked at Yin Yang with his hawk-like eyes. He was certain there was nothing on this fellow that could attract mystical beasts. It looked like he was going to win the bet this time. He could not help but relax. "You want to bet with me?" The blue-clothed youth did not know whether to laugh or cry. His 2 companions beside him also looked like they were watching a good show. Although this blue-clothed youth was not a beast tamer, he had been exposed to beast taming since he was young, and had been immersed in it for quite some time. An average beast tamer might not even be able to reach his level. The guards beside him exchanged glances with each other. One of them left immediately. However, this young master's wager is very high. It's not something an average person can accept. The blue-clothed youth looked at Yin Yang with a smile, like a cat toying with a mouse. Yin Yang frowned and said, "Young master, you must be joking. Isn't our wager already set? Just these few kittens? They belong to whoever wins." The blue-clothed youth smiled reservedly and said slowly, "A few lightning cats are not worthy of this young master's wager." Yin Yang looked a little hesitant. Slowly, a sharp glint shone in his eyes as he said faintly, "If this young master insists on giving me some other treasures, this young master can accept them with a smile." The blue-clothed youth smiled. "That's what I thought too." In the shadows, Ji Ling covered her mouth with her hand, trying hard to hold back her laughter. When she heard that Yin Yang wanted the kittens, Ji Ling felt that Yin Yang, who was full of evil tricks, was definitely setting a trap. Ji Ling did not think that Yin Yang's target was just a few ordinary lightning cats. Seeing that Yin Yang had proposed a wager, and in such a manner, Ling almost had a stomachache. Even the 1,000 illusion monkey, a level surpassing mystical beast, was so obedient to Yun Yang. And these fellows actually wanted to compete with him in mystical beast recognition? Wasn't that just giving away money? Watching as Yun Yang closed in on her step by step and retreated in order to advance, tricking this fellow into his trap, Ling rolled her eyes, not knowing what to say. It was truly unfortunate for these young masters to meet someone like Yun Yang. They had been slaughtered by Yun Yang like a pig, and now this fellow was forcing Yun Yang to raise his wager. This was a strange situation. Even if they lost, they would not be able to get an explanation afterwards. How could there be such a miserable person? Chapter 18. A guard hurried forward and whispered a few words into the young man's ear. The young man's gaze flickered as he lifted his head to look at Yun Yang with a smile, saying, "This young master thought that. You're no ordinary person after all. Young Master Yin, it's an honor to meet you." Yun Yang wore a surprised expression. Huh? The young man in blue still spoke in a slow tone, as if everything was within his grasp. He smiled and said, "The young master of Marquis Xiaoyao beyond the heavens. You're famous in Tiantang City. Since young Master Yin has such an identity, this young master doesn't have to worry about the wager this time." Yin Yang's pupil shrunk. "You investigated me? It's not really an investigation. It's just that knowing yourself and your enemy is the key to victory," the young man in blue said. "I wonder what young Marquis Yin is willing to bet with me." Yun Yang frowned, looking hesitant. The young man in blue wore a disdainful smirk as he said, "Since young Master Yin has asked to bet with this young master, it can't be that. You don't even have a wager to offer?" Yun Yang raised his eyebrows. "We'll bet 1,000,000. The young man in blue laughed mockingly and interrupted him, saying, "We're all martial artists. There's really nothing to bet on like gold and silver. Let's bet on something else." The other two young masters could not help but burst out laughing. It was always a delight to see the young master in blue use various methods to force others into a corner, yet unable to do anything about it. In the end, they could only submit. It was the same today. Obviously, this young master of Marquis Xiaoyao in Tiantang City had been pushed to a dead end by his friend. Even if he had to go bankrupt, he had to maintain his dignity. Yun Yang hesitated and said, "If that's the case, young master's bet is too big, and it might hurt our relationship. How about we stop here?" How could the young man in blue agree? A big fish was about to take the bait. How could he allow him to escape? His expression darkened as he said coldly, "Is young Master Yin looking down on me? I'll bet when you say so. I'll stop now when you say no. Even if young Master Yin holds a high position in the Empire of Yutong, you can't play with people like this." He narrowed his eyes and enunciated each word clearly. "Moreover, I, Shiman Wandai, am not someone you can toy with, young Master Yin." Shiman Wandai. In the end, he still said his name. Yun Yang nodded as if he knew nothing and said, "So it's young Master Shiman. It looks like young Master Shiman is determined to gamble?" However, his heart shuddered. West Gate. The world's 8 great clans: north, south, east, west, spring, summer, autumn, and winter. It seemed that Shiman Wandai was a member of the Shiman clan. Just as he was thinking, he heard Shiman Wandai say proudly, "Even if I don't want to, I have to." How could he let Yun Yang go now that he had forced Yun Yang to a dead end? Shiman Wandai could not help but feel a little proud of his own methods. Of course he was in the wrong at first. It was completely unreasonable of him to butt in when someone else wanted to buy something. However, as he spoke, he realized that he was so eloquent that he was actually moving in an unexpected direction step by step. Furthermore, he wanted to gamble. Wasn't this an obvious opportunity to reap benefits? He waved his hand and said mockingly, "Why? Could it be that young Master Yin can't afford to gamble?" What he meant was, "You proposed a bet and I accepted it, but you don't dare to gamble?" Yun Yang's face flushed red as he said angrily, "Who can't afford to gamble? Whatever you want to bet, this young master will accept it." "You've fallen for this young master's provocation." Shiman Wandai was overjoyed. Borrowing Yun Yang's impulsive words, he said directly, "This young master can offer a 7th grade mystical pill, 100 mystical stones, and a treasured saber, Phoenix's Cry. one of the 7 swords and 3 sabers forged by the foremost blacksmith Ohunzi 1,000 years ago. However, what does young Master Yin offer to gamble with me? The crowd gasped in surprise. A 7th-grade mystical pill. If the mystical pill of a 7th-grade mystical beast were to be calculated in gold, it would be worth at least $1 million. As for the mystical stones, they were the ultimate supplement for a mystical cultivator's cultivation. The energy within a mystical stone could be absorbed within 3 days, and after that, it was equivalent to a year of closed-door cultivation. This was even more of a priceless treasure. As for the 7 swords and 3 sabers forged by Ohunzi, they were universally recognized as divine weapons. Among them, the Merak sword was the Empire of Dongshuan's national treasure. One could only imagine the value of the 7 swords and 3 sabers. Each of these 3 items was a treasure that most people in this world would not even see once in their lifetime. What would Yun Yang use to gamble? Yun Yang's gaze was filled with hesitation. He was also slightly shocked. It was true, because he didn't expect that this guy would make the bet so big. To him, this was simply a windfall from the sky. If so, he might as well play a big one as well. Looking at Yun Yang's shock, Shiman Wandai was even more pleased. What do you think, young Master Yin? Shiman Wandai said slowly. If young Master Yin only chooses one of them to gamble with, it doesn't matter. Yun Yang sucked in a deep breath and said, "These things are not enough." Shiman Wandai and his 2 companions were stunned. These things are not enough? You are merely the son of a marquis from a secular country. What good things can you offer? Yun Yang seemed to hesitate for a moment before saying, I will use a 9th-level mystical beast's cub to gamble with you. These things are not worth enough. Yun Yang sucked in a deep breath, knowing that he would become the center of a whirlpool the moment he uttered these words. But he did not turn back. Was he betting just to win something? A 9th-level mystical beast's cub. Even Shiman Wandai felt his scalp tingle from the shock of these words. This was a legendary 9th-level mystical beast. Whether it was in the forest or in human society, it was a king that stood at the top of the pyramid. You have a 9th-level mystical beast's cub? Shiman Wandai's gaze turned heated. The faint greed in his eyes could not be concealed. Of course, Yun Yang seemed a little regretful. But if you don't dare to gamble, then I'll gamble. Shiman Wandai cut him off abruptly, his eyes burning. But where is your 9th-level mystical beast cub? Even the weakest 9th-level mystical beast was an invincible presence among ordinary human experts. Where was the 9th-level mystical beast? Yun Yang almost laughed in his heart. He wanted very much to say that it was in the basket right before him. These little fellows had somehow fallen to this place and were born weak. But before they came here, their parents had placed a seal on their bodies, making it impossible for others to identify them. As long as they are in my hands, I can restore them to their original state within a night, and turn them into a priceless 9th-level mystical beast cub. If young Master Shiman believes me, then let's gamble. Yun Yang said faintly, although the 9th-level mystical beast cub is not in my hands now, if I say I have it, then I have it. He lifted his head and smiled. If I'm lying, I'm afraid I can't bear the Shiman family's vengeance. Shiman Wandai's eyes shone as he said coldly, It's good that you know. Shiman Wandai did not doubt Yin Yang's words at all. Now it was his turn to fret. What could possibly be worth the value of a 9th-level mystical beast cub? The 7th-level mystical pill, 100 mystical stones, and a saber that he had mentioned earlier were obviously not enough. These could allow a person to develop rapidly, but that was all. Compared to a 9th-level mystical beast, it was insignificant. His Shiman family had been able to become one of the 8 noble families, because one of the elders of the family had a 9th-level pinnacle mystical beast as his combat partner. This was how the foundation of the Shiman family's rise had been laid. Now the Shiman family was close to 1,500 years old. Even 108th level pinnacle mystical beasts could not compare to a 9th level beginner mystical beast. This was the suppression of a level, and the law of nature could not be changed. If he could possess a 9th level mystical beast cub, then it would not only be a matter of him becoming the number 1 seed in the family, but the entire Shiman family would gradually grow stronger, and become the top of the 8 noble families of the continent, perhaps even to the next level. Shimin Wandai's gaze was fiery. Beside him, the expressions of the 2 young masters, who were originally his companions, changed as well. As the younger generation of the same family, how could they not know the importance of a 9th-level mystical beast? If Shimin Wandai were to obtain a 9th-level mystical beast, their gazes towards Yin Yang turned dangerous. I'll offer 2 7th-level mystical beast cores. Shimin Wandai's gaze was close to insanity. 500 mystical stones, 30 mystical crystals, a treasured saber of the 7 swords and 3 sabers, and a promise to guarantee the safety of the Yin family. This promise, no matter if I win or lose the bet, is absolutely valid. I can swear to the heavens and earth. The mystical pills had doubled, the mystical stones had quadrupled, and he had even added 30 mystical crystals. One had to know that the value of a mystical crystal was comparable to 100 mystical stones. They could not be compared at all. This young master Shimin Wandai had obviously given his all. Even Ji Ling, who was hiding in the dark, was impressed by his words. This young master Shimin Wandai was not a brainless person after all. Yin Yang had been goaded by him into revealing the 9th-level mystical beast. He would probably become the target of public criticism next. The issue of safety was the biggest issue. Everything that Shimin Wandai had said earlier could not compare to the value of a 9th-level mystical beast. However, with the promise to guarantee the safety of the Yun family, it was a match. It was evident that Shimin Wandai's mind was still very sharp, and he was able to grasp the main point. Ji Ling sighed deeply. It's a pity that you have no hope of winning at all. The more you bet, the more it proves that Yin Yang will win. However, where would Yin Yang get a 9th-level mystical beast? Ji Ling felt that it was time for Yin Yang to relent. Indeed, Yin Yang took a deep breath, a radiant smile appearing on his face as he said, I accept the bet. All the bait that could be thrown had been thrown out, and the benefits that could be obtained had basically been dug out to the lowest level. The additional goal that he had wanted to achieve had also been achieved. Chapter 19. None of the onlookers had expected such a shocking wager to occur in this small mystical beast trading market. They were all dumbfounded. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the 2 of them took 3 steps forward and clapped their hands to seal the wager. The wager was officially established. Everyone's gaze was focused on the bamboo frame between the 2 of them. It was these few ordinary lightning cats that could decide the outcome of such a shocking wager with their choice. The entire incident was so absurd that it felt surreal. Although the crowd had witnessed the entire process with their own eyes, they were still confused. Why had such a wager suddenly occurred? If Yin Yang had been the one to initiate the wager, he had indeed suggested it first. However, he had wanted to back off when he saw that the stakes were a little too high. This was something that everyone could see. In the end, Shimin Wandai had forced him into a dead end, and had no choice but to take the gamble. From the looks of it, it was definitely not Yin Yang's initiative. It did not seem like it was Shimin Wandai's initiative either. His main intention was to bully others. But who would have thought that a wager of 9th-level mystical beasts would occur in the end? All the aristocratic disciples looked at Shimin Wandai with envy and jealousy. How could this fellow be so lucky? He had just casually strolled around the mystical beast market, and he had actually come across such a lucky wager. A 9th-level mystical beast. With Shimin Wandai's skill, and the wager of the mystical beast's recognition, how could it not have been a piece of cake? How could the son of a mere marquis from the Empire of Yutong be a match for the Shimin family, one of the 8 noble families? Shimin Wandai had simply picked up a chance for his family to rise again. A light flashed in midair as a few silhouettes descended like immortals from the heavens. It was the Shimin family. Shimin Wandai was finally relieved and looked at his 2 companions with a smug expression. He lifted his chin and said to Yin Yang, Let's begin. Yin Yang took a deep breath and looked at Shimin Wandai with a complicated gaze. He did not speak for a long time. Shimin Wandai frowned. An intimidating aura emanated from him. Do you dare not take the wager? I'll kill you, Yin Yang said helplessly. Let's begin. Let's see who will emerge victorious. He even put on an expression of anger. Ji Ling, who was hidden in the shadows, almost burst out laughing. You're about to kill him, yet you're still acting so helpless. The shopkeeper was obviously frightened as well. His legs were trembling as he carried the big bamboo basket out. The newly arrived old man standing behind Shimon Wanli was an old man with an aquiline nose. He slowly spread his hands apart, and an invisible force spread out. With a schwa sound, the surrounding crowd suddenly scattered in all directions, as though they had encountered an irresistible force, creating a large empty space. Under Shimon Wandai's suggestion, the bamboo basket was tipped upside down and placed in the middle. Then, the two of them began to lure the kitten from 100 feet away. Yun Yang agreed after some thought. This delighted Shimon Wandai even more. My trap was a complete success. Moreover, this idiot had already stepped into it. Ha ha ha! Among the onlookers, there were many who sighed and stamped their feet. You idiot, you have nothing on you right now. On the other hand, great young Master Shimon had come for the mystical beast competition. How could he not have something on him? By agreeing to this condition, you've already lost. The shopkeeper had gathered 7 or 8 kittens in the middle, waiting for orders. Yun Yang was already sitting cross-legged 100 feet away. Opposite him, a pile of snow-white medicinal pills and a small bell appeared in Shimon Wandai's hands. He smiled confidently. It's over, it's over. That idiot Yun will definitely lose. Someone lamented. Yes, Shimon Wandai has the mystical beast pill, and it's of the highest grade. Not only that, he even has the mystical beast soul bell, the ultimate weapon against mystical beasts. What right does that Yin have to compete with him? Sigh. The Shimon clan has taken advantage of it for nothing. The other young master sighed. Initially, these fellows had hoped that Yin Yang would pull an upset. They could not let the 9th level mystical beast fall into the hands of the Shimon clan. Looking at the situation now, however, they were all in despair. Everyone can rely on their own methods now. Shimon Wandai said sanctimoniously. Now, we'll start luring the mystical beast. Let's see if it will come to my side or yours. Yun Yang put on a dumbfounded expression of grief and indignation. Young Master Shimon, isn't it a little unfair for you to bet like this? Shimon Wandai said gleefully. There shouldn't be anything unfair about this. I'm still me, and you're still you. During this process, I didn't rely on any external forces to obtain anything. Everything I obtained was what I already had on me. You are the same. This means that you and I are only relying on our own methods. From the moment young Master Yun suggested this bet, I was like this and so were you. Therefore this young master feels that this is a fair and reasonable bet, and there's nothing fishy about it. Shimon Wandai said seriously. If I were to lose under such circumstances, I would naturally be willing to accept my loss. Yin Yang shuddered. You. Shimon Wandai frowned and said word by word. Our bet is witnessed by heaven and earth. Could it be that young Master Yun wishes to break the bet? Yin Yang dared not voice his anger. If that's the case, I shall accept my loss if I were to lose. Consider it as making a friend. Shimon Wandai laughed. Young Master Yun is indeed magnanimous. If that's the case, let us begin. Yun Yang's face was dark as he said, Begin. Victory or defeat is up to fate. The order was given amidst Shimon Wandai's triumphant laughter. The mystical beast shopkeeper opened the bamboo basket, revealing a total of 9 kittens that looked like they had just turned 1 month old. Each of them looked around timidly, meowing. On the other side, Shimon Wandai had already scattered a bunch of mystical beast pills on the ground. At the same time, his left hand channeled his skill to produce a gust of wind that blew the fragrance of the pills over. His right hand was similarly channeling his skill, moving soundlessly along the ground to intercept any possibility of Yin Yang making the same move. At the same time, the profound beast soul bell in the crook of his arm rang out, emitting a series of mysterious bell sounds that seemed to carry a strange rhythm. 3 killer moves had been unleashed at once. Shimon Wandai was determined to win. Yun Yang's expression was still one of indignation, as if he had been deceived. He sat with his legs crossed, the endless divine art in his body beginning to circulate at full force. The tiny leaves of the lotus of endless fate swayed, emitting a strong air of vitality. At the same time, Yin Yang looked anxious as he stared at the 9 kittens, calling out anxiously, "Kittens, quick, come to me, come. I'll take good care of you all." Laughter rang out from all around. "You're too naive. Do you really think the kittens can understand what you're saying?" The rich aroma of the mystical beast pills had almost enveloped the entire area. A few kittens huddled together, looking timidly from side to side as if hesitating, unsure of what to choose. Shimin Wandai's smile widened. He could clearly see that the kittens were looking at him more and more frequently. A sigh came from behind him. Shimin Wandai's expression did not change, but his eyes were sharp. Those who are sighing now are those who don't wish for the Shimin family to obtain a 9th-level mystical beast. They usually call each other brothers, but who would have thought that they all have their own intentions behind the scenes? After this, he would have to reconsider his attitude towards them. It was at this moment that exclamations of disbelief rang out. Shimin Wandai's expression changed as he turned his head to look. Among the 9 kittens, 2 of them had actually begun to move after a moment of hesitation. They first took 2 steps towards him, but then stopped. They were hesitating again. Their fluffy tails swayed loosely as they let out soft, weak cries. Their wavering was obvious. Shimin Wandai panicked. "I've already gained such a huge advantage, yet you're still hesitating? What are you hesitating for? Come over here quickly." Looking at the opposite side, Yin Yang was still calling out futilely, "Kittens, come quick, kittens." However, amidst his ridiculous cries, the 2 kittens who had already begun to move actually began to slowly turn around and head towards Yin Yang. Everyone present was dumbfounded at the same time. "Come back!" Shimin Wandai roared anxiously, beads of sweat forming on his face. However, the 2 kittens seemed to have been startled by his shout, as they ran even faster towards Yin Yang. The distance of 100 feet was not considered long. The 2 kittens had reached Yin Yang in an instant as they stumbled and swayed. Their 4 tiny front paws were raised together as they hugged Yin Yang's calf affectionately, raising their heads to meow as if to say, "Good man, protect us quickly, you've scared us to death. That person over there is so scary. He's like a lunatic." Yin Yang hugged the 2 kittens in delight, beaming with delight as he stroked them affectionately. The 2 kittens rubbed themselves against Yin Yang's body, trying their best to please him, greedily breathing in Yin Yang's scent. Their faces were filled with contentment. Everyone was petrified. Everyone's eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. Well, what was going on? Why was it that the one who had prepared to the teeth was showing signs of losing, while the one who had no cultivation base, no tricks, no miraculous pills, and no facilities, young Master Yin of Tiantang City, seemed to have the upper hand? 2 of the kittens had already chosen their owners. Everyone was even more nervous now. There were hundreds of people watching, but no one dared to make a sound. Shimin Wandai tried his best to urge his mystical qi to maximize the fragrance of the pills, sweat dripping from his face. Only 2 had passed. There was still hope. There was still hope. "Come quickly," Shimin Wandai prayed in his heart. However, things did not go as he wished. Another white kitten made a move. It raised its paw and hesitated for a moment, then suddenly made a beautiful turn. It sprinted towards Yin Yang. Another wave of eyeballs fell to the ground. This time it was even faster. Almost instantaneously, it scurried into Yin Yang's embrace, meowing happily and contentedly. Shimin Wandai's face was as white as the bottom of a wok. 3 of them. But he still had nothing to show for it. The onlookers' mouths were agape and their eyes were as round as saucers, watching the unbelievable scene unfold before them like puppets, each of them feeling like they were dreaming. "This is ridiculous. What I'm seeing can't be real. How could such an unimaginable thing happen?" "Young master, do not panic, there are still 6 more." The elder from the Shimin family comforted him with a dark expression. "We still have a lot of hope." Shimin Wandai nodded nervously, his palms sweating. The next moment, all of a sudden, the remaining 6 kittens started to move collectively. The previous 3 were what Yin Yang really wanted, while the remaining 6 were the real lightning cats. However, even if they were 3rd-level mystical beasts, they were still mystical beasts. Perhaps their reactions would be slower, but they could still sense what was most beneficial to them in this world. The 6 kittens meowed at the same time and turned around. striding elegantly towards Yun Yang. They ran faster and faster. Their eyes were sparkling with joy, and their furry tails were wagging happily. Shimin Wandai's face was ashen, sweat pouring down his face like a waterfall. Chapter 20. Damn it! Shimin Wandai suddenly roared as he stood up. His face contorted in fury as he struck out with his palm. A flash of golden light flashed. A few tender cries of pain could be heard. The 6 lightning cats that had been sprinting towards Yun Yang were sent flying into the air, their blood splattering like rain. Stop! Yun Yang bellowed in fury as he dashed out. No matter how fast he was, his cultivation base was still too far away from Shimin Wandai's. He only managed to grab one of the kittens before mystical qi enveloped him. Wah! Yun Yang trembled as he spat out a mouthful of blood, his face pale as a sheet. His cultivation base had yet to recover. He could not withstand a single blow from such a force. However, his eyes were still fixed on the opposite side. Young Master Shimin, are you a sore loser? Shimin Wandai was trembling as he glared at Yun Yang. He wanted to deny this outcome, but heaven and earth were the witnesses of the wager. There was no way he could deny it. Admit defeat. Shimin Wandai's face was twisted like a ferocious ghost. These things are all yours. Everyone present was still in a daze. They were all dumbstruck. They could not fathom how such a bizarre outcome had come about. Shimin Wandai's heart trembled as he looked at the items he had handed over, despair creeping into his eyes. 2 7th-grade mystical beast cores, 500 mystical stones, 30 mystical crystals, and a treasured saber. Even the Shimin family would suffer for a while if he were to hand over these items. This was a massive amount of resources, other than the treasured saber that he had begged his family head father to obtain, which was something that truly belonged to him. The rest belonged to the family. If he were to hand over these items, his days in the family would be extremely difficult. He could not even maintain his current status, let alone improve further. Yun Yang's face was pale as he smiled. Young Master Shimin is indeed trustworthy. Thank you, thank you. Also, I'll leave the safety of my humble home in the Shimin family's hands in the future. Shimin Wandai almost spat out a mouthful of blood, his eyes fixed on Yun Yang as he said, Of course. Due to the terms of the wager, we must do our best. Everyone looked at Yun Yang with a complicated gaze. This guy won just like that. But how did he win? Shimin Wandai's mystical beast core was still scattered on the ground, as if the people's doubts had been scattered all over. The people of Shimin clan quickly left, and the onlookers also gradually dispersed. The other young masters studied Yun Yang for a while with complicated gazes before leaving as well. Yun Yang held a lightning cat in his arms. This kitten was saved by him just now, but it was also seriously injured. Now it looked dispirited, its eyes were half closed, and it was moaning weakly. Yun Yang channeled a gust of mystical qi into the kitten's tiny body, barely keeping it alive. The other 3 snow-white kittens gathered by Yun Yang's feet and lined up in a row. They tilted their heads to look at Yun Yang, their black and white eyes distinct. Yun Yang smiled. He had finally gotten his hands on these treasures. Now he actually had a total of 4. Just thinking about it made him feel incredulous. Young master, the shopkeeper said with a long face. It's all right, I'll pay you for the dead ones as well. Yun Yang said. But shopkeeper, I have a question for you. The shopkeeper was overjoyed. Shimin Wandai had killed his kittens and left without compensation. The shopkeeper knew that he could not afford to offend him and was prepared to accept his bad luck. He did not expect Yun Yang to be willing to compensate him, which was wonderful. He said gratefully, Young master, please ask away. Yun Yang pondered for a moment before saying, These 4 kittens, where did you find them? He pointed at the 4 cats whose fur was clearly crystal white. The shopkeeper suddenly felt a little awkward and said, This half a month ago, in the wee hours of the morning, a man suddenly fainted in front of my door. I saved him, and in his arms were these 4 kittens. I saw that they were lightning cat cubs, so I decided to put them up for sale here, cough cough. Yun Yang's eyes lit up. Where is the person? The shopkeeper sighed and said, Ever since I saved him, he has been in a coma. Until now, he has not woken up. Every day, He can only force some soup and water into his mouth to maintain his life. I've sought medical help for him, but I really can't afford the huge medical fees. I'm not going to make it. Yun Yang said, bring me to him. If Yun Yang's guess was correct, the person who could bring these 4 mystical beast cubs with him must have come from the depths of the mystical beast forest. Who knew how many dangers he had gone through? He might even have killed 2 adult mystical beasts before he could bring these cubs back. Which one of these people was not an earth-shattering existence? He had actually fainted in front of a mystical beast shop, and had even been saved by the shopkeeper, selling his mystical beast cubs as lightning cats. The shopkeeper brought Yun Yang inside. Yun Yang carried the injured lightning cat in his arms, while the other 4 kittens lined up obediently behind him, not leaving his side for even an inch. The 1,000 illusion monkey squatted obediently on Yun Yang's shoulder. At this moment, Yun Yang looked like a juggler. Jiling was already by Yun Yang's side, looking at him with a smile that said, young lad, you have to give me an explanation when we get home. Others might not have known, but Jiling was very clear about it. Yun Yang had indeed tricked the Shiman family this time. However, there was one thing that Jiling could not understand. With Yun Yang's current status, why would he want to offend the Shiman family? They were people from 2 different worlds. How could they afford to offend Yun Yang? In the room at the back of the mystical beast shop, the smell of medicine assailed one's nostrils. An emaciated man was lying on it, breathing weakly. His face was as pale as paper, a deathly gray. He doesn't have long to live, but I really can't save him. I might as well give him a quick death, but I can't bring myself to do it. The plump shopkeeper looked melancholy. I've been worried to death these days. Yun Yang approached and examined the man, frowning. He then tried his best to channel some air of vitality over and said, you can't save him here. Let me take him away. The shopkeeper was overjoyed. He had been worried to death about this hot potato, and now that Yun Yang was willing to take it, he was overjoyed. Thank you, young master, thank you. Yun Yang nodded. When he's better, I'll tell him that it was you who saved him. There's no need for that. The shopkeeper only wanted to send this hot potato away as soon as possible. How could he be greedy for repayment? Just say that young master is kind and generous. This lowly one didn't do anything, I dare not claim credit. Yun Yang looked at him deeply and said, that's good too. The shopkeeper did not know what kind of opportunity he had missed. Not to mention the 4 9th-level mystical beast cubs. Just the favor of a pinnacle expert was enough for him to enjoy forever. However, Yun Yang did not plan to let it go completely. Although this person was timid and weak, he was able to lend a helping hand when he was in danger. He saw someone on the brink of death, but he still tried his best to hold on. After paying, Yun Yang purposely paid an extra 1,000 silver taels and hired a stretcher to carry the man to the residence of Yin. Jiling followed with a smile. The journey was silent. You've made a fortune today. How do you want to thank me? Seeing that Yun Yang had settled down, Jiling finally asked for credit with her hands behind her back. Thank you. Yun Yang pursed his lips. Why should I thank you? You saw me being bullied today, and you didn't come out to help. It's fine if you're a coward, but you want me to thank you? Jiling retorted angrily. If it wasn't for me, would you have won? Yun Yang rolled his eyes, feeling that women were really unreasonable creatures. Do you think I can't win without you? Jiling stomped her foot. You idiot. Those people were my acquaintances. If I had appeared, you wouldn't have been able to gamble. That's the first reason. The second, if it wasn't for my 1,000 illusion monkey, why would they be so polite to you? Jiling snorted. Yun Yang thought about it, and realized that it made sense. In the beginning, those fellows' gazes were constantly scanning the 1,000 illusion monkey's body, and they had a look of uncertainty and shock on their faces. So that's why. They were polite to me because I'm handsome. Yun Yang would not admit it. But what do you want from me? Jiling said. Give me one of your 4 kittens as a token of gratitude. No way. Yun Yang refused without hesitation. Don't even think about it. This is a high-level mystical beast's infant that can only be chanced upon. How can you take one away for free? Do I know you that well? Jiling fumed at Yun Yang's rejection. You are so unreasonable. You were supposed to accompany me to buy a mystical beast, but you didn't even buy me a single strand of the beast's fur. Instead, it was you who took advantage of me. Now, I want a mere third-level mystical beast cub from you. And you're actually unwilling. Jiling glared at him. Why are you so petty? Yin Yang smiled wryly. Petty? I really can't afford to be generous about this. If you were my wife, I could give you one to protect yourself. But you're not, of course. He dared not say this aloud. It's not that I don't want to give it to you, but this third-level lightning cat is a little too. Yin Yang rolled his eyes and said, Actually, I've been searching for it for you today. I've already chosen a target that's much better than this one. There's a 5th-level pinnacle Silvermoon Celestial Wolf opposite the shop. I think that one is better. If you choose that one and take this lightning cat, won't it become food for the Silvermoon Celestial Wolf? What's the point of that? Yin Yang was eloquent, trying his best to convince Jiling, Silvermoon Celestial Wolf? Jiling's attention was indeed attracted. That's right, a Silvermoon Celestial Wolf. Its fur is silver and shiny. Moreover, it looks obedient and cute, harmless to humans and animals. It can be kept as a pet, but it can protect its master at critical moments. Most importantly, a Silvermoon Celestial Wolf cub, at the peak of the 5th level, can evolve if it is raised well. But once it mutates, it's hard to say how far it can go in the future. It's not impossible for it to advance continuously to the 8th or 9th level. The key is how to train it, and what resources to accumulate. Besides, I've noticed that the baby Silvermoon Celestial Wolf is not even a month old yet. It's the best time to raise it. As he spoke, he looked at Jiling's eyes that were growing brighter and brighter. He continued, Of course, the resources needed to raise the Silvermoon Celestial Wolf will be astronomical. Most people don't have such resources, but it shouldn't be a problem for you, young lady, right? No worries, no worries. Jiling's eyes shone with excitement. Think about it, if the Silvermoon Celestial Wolf could evolve in your hands. Yin Yang smiled and stopped halfway through his sentence. Jiling's face was already beaming with joy. One could only imagine how much face she would gain. Of course, if you really want this lightning cat, I can give you one. I have a total of 5 of them. It's not a big deal. Yin Yang continued. In that case, the Silvermoon Celestial Wolf will be mine. No way! Jiling shouted angrily. The Silvermoon Celestial Wolf is mine. I'll go buy it now. He turned around and ran out with a whoosh. Yin Yang coughed, wiping the sweat from his brow as he watched the young lady disappear into the distance. Go buy the Silvermoon Celestial Wolf. I'll train it for you when I come back. It's best to send this lady away as soon as possible. She didn't want him to find out that there were 4 9th-grade profound beast cubs right under her nose one day. Yet she had remained indifferent to them. I guess I'll be in trouble then. Yin Yang pursed his lips and sighed. Women are not to be trifled with, especially when they fly into a rage out of humiliation. But that's a matter for the future. The most important thing now is that these 4 little fellows are all mine. Yin Yang looked at the 4 fellows that were like kittens circling around him, and could not help but smile. Chapter 21. These little fellows were finally in his hands. Yin Yang verified them according to Supreme Wind's illustrated history of exotic beasts of the mountains and seas. He pulled their ears, looked at their stomachs, flipped their eyelids, looked at their nostrils, looked at their throats, and inserted mystical chi to check. Finally, he could confirm that these were the cubs of the 9th-level beginner mystical beasts, the Eclipse Panther. The Eclipse Panther moved like the wind, was good at hiding, and hunted swiftly. It had always been known as the assassin of the mystical beasts. When it matured, it could consume gold and jade for food. It had bronze skin and iron bones, indestructible. Yin Yang was overjoyed. At the same time he had a doubt. Who was 8th Brother Supreme Wind's true identity? The Shiman family of the 8 noble families, plus Shiman Wandai's companions, must be young masters of similar status. They even brought along their followers who were all experts. They did not even suspect anything. Yin Yang, on the other hand, could easily recognize and identify them according to what was written in a book. Each of the 8 noble families had more than 1,000 years of history. but their knowledge could not even compare to a book that Supreme Wind had casually placed by his pillow. Even if there were specializations in this field, it was definitely not an easy task. Yun Yang suppressed this doubt in his heart. Eighth brother's identity had to be clarified. Everything that eighth brother had yet to complete, he would complete on his behalf. However, the prerequisite was that he had to recover from his injuries and raise his cultivation base to deal with these endless enemies. Young master, you? Lao Mei was dumbfounded. His young master had gone out once the day before yesterday. When he came back, a monkey had followed him. There was also a lively woman. Today, his young master had gone out again. When he came back, he had brought back 5 cats. There was also a half-dead man. Lao Mei was rather curious. Young master, will you bring back hundreds and thousands of wolves the next time you go out? Or perhaps a large group of men and women? Nothing much, just a few small pets. Yun Yang said. Inform Ma Qin and the rest to come to the residence of Yin tonight. Tell them that there's something good this time. Lao Mei was exasperated, and even gave them a notice. How dare they come? Those fellows must have been traumatized by this. Don't worry, they will definitely come this time, Yun Yang said confidently. Lao Mei was confused. Just as he was about to leave, he saw Yun Yang take out a small pouch from his robe and pass it to him. There are some cultivation resources in here. Use them to cultivate. If I can break through to the 6th mountain soon, that would be even better. Lao Mei took the bag and left in a daze. When he was out of Yin Yang's sight, he could not help but yelp when he opened the bag. His hands trembled, and he almost threw the pouch away. The inside was filled with resplendent brilliance and dense spiritual qi. There were actually 50 mysterious stones and 10 mysterious crystals. This was a priceless treasure that could aid in cultivation. Young master, where did you get it? There are so many of them. Lao Mei could not help but feel a surge of warmth in his heart as he thought about it. He had been stuck at the bottleneck of the 5th mountain for 4 or 5 years. Now that he had these things, he would definitely be able to break through the 6th mountain. For a martial artist to become a true expert in cultivation, there was a prerequisite. 6 innately awakened chakras was not uncommon. One could enter the mystical realm by stepping through the door. 3 parts of fate were determined by heaven, and 70% of the foundation was eternal. In other words, one had to be gifted with 6 innately awakened chakras, and above to be able to enter the mystical realm. 6 innately awakened chakras was only a gift bestowed by the heavens. There would be nothing if one did not work hard. Only then would there be the merit 12 mountains, each mountain a different heaven. A wise man once said, a martial artist's cultivation is like climbing a mountain with a heavy load. Only by climbing the peak of a mountain can one see where the next peak is. There would always be a tallest mountain in front of one's eyes. Before climbing the first mountain, one would never know that there was a higher mountain in this world than the one in front of him. This unknown was known as the barrier of knowledge. Therefore, there was another saying that went, to ascend to heaven, first climb a mountain. After one mountain, there would be a heaven. The meaning was, only by climbing this mountain would you be able to see a whole new world. Therefore, the merit 12 mountains, each mountain a different heaven. First past the 12 mountains, then the 9 heavens. It seemed easy to understand, with a tinge of vulgarity, but it was a step-by-step path. I'm back. Jiling rushed in excitedly, carrying a small, timid silver-white animal on her shoulder. Look, the Silvermoon Celestial Wolf, I've bought it. How is it? Can you see if it's this little guy? Yin Yang went forward to take a look and nodded. Yes, it is. Lady's luck is not bad. It hasn't been bought after such a long time. Jiling squinted her eyes but said, thank you so much. The whole market is talking about your shocking bet. Who would still be in the mood to trade? Haha. Yin Yang laughed and said, I'll train your pet from tomorrow onwards. Then today, Jiling was chased away by Yin Yang before she could finish her sentence. I have something to do today. Can't you see there are still injured people here? This bastard really doesn't have the slightest bit of manliness. How can he treat a beauty so rudely and uncompromisingly? Jiling mumbled to herself, stomping her feet angrily and leaving with a pout. Her words were not soft, so Yun Yang heard her clearly. The corners of his lips curled into a disdainful smile. What was manliness? Was it edible? Why did he need to treat a beauty with manliness? Why did he need to compromise? If this beauty could eventually become this man's wife, it was fine to compromise. However, not all women could become a man's wife. Then, why should I give in to you? Just because you're a woman? That's called being cheap, not manliness. Yin Yang did not voice out his true thoughts. Of course, if Lao Mei knew of Yin Yang's thoughts, he would definitely beat his chest and stomp his feet. Young master, there's a reason you're still single at the age of 19. Yin Yang walked into the room. As he walked in, he had a vague feeling that something was not right. However, he could not recall what it was. It was only when he reached the bed of the dying man that he remembered. Huh? Why is there powder dripping down from my arms? Instinctively, he reached into his arms. Suddenly, he sucked in a breath of air, and with a swoosh, he pulled out a large parcel from his arms. However, the originally large parcel had shrunk to more than half its original size. Yin Yang's eyes widened into two bronze bells. What was going on? Opening the parcel, there was nothing wrong with it. Inside were the fresh mystical stones, mystical crystals, and mystical pills that he had just won today. The mystical pills were still intact. There were 2 of them, that was right. However, where were the mystical stones? Why were there 200 missing? Why did the rest seem to have shrunk as well? Where were the mystical crystals? There were 30 of them in total. I gave Lao Mei 5 of them, so there should be 25 left. Why are there only 13 left? Where did the other 12 go? Other than that, there were countless powders in the parcel. Yin Yang felt a little dizzy as he took a look. The mystical stones and mystical crystals that I lost, they wouldn't have turned into powder, would they? Could it be that Shiman Wandai gave me fake goods? But I've already verified it. No matter how blind I am, I wouldn't be mistaken. Could it be? Yin Yang entered the space of his consciousness anxiously. Taking a look, he saw the tender green leaves of the lotus of endless fate swaying in joy. Although the second lotus leaf had not grown, it was obvious that the color of the leaf had darkened. It was visibly thicker than before. At the root of the lotus of endless fate, there was a crystal-clear mist that had condensed into a solid form. Yin Yang shuddered at the sight of it. Wasn't this the purest mystical qi contained within the mystical crystals and mystical stones? I was wondering why they had turned into powder. So they had all been stolen. Despicable thief. Yin Yang glared at the seedling, almost going crazy. He had only managed to get his hands on some cultivation resources after offending the Shiman family by chance, but half of them had been devoured by the lotus of endless fate in such a short time. By a stroke of luck, he had offended the Shiman clan in order to obtain some cultivation resources. Yet, in such a short period of time, half of them had been devoured by the lotus of endless fate. As if sensing Yin Yang's anger, the seedling swayed slightly and curled up its leaves in a guilty manner. It actually looked a little shy. It was like a child who had done something wrong and was apologizing. Oh my, I'm wrong. Yin Yang was momentarily taken aback by the cuteness, feeling his anger vanish into thin air in an instant. A few days ago, on my neck, on my arm, under my pillow in my study, did you steal the calming frost jade as well? The seedling's leaves curled up even tighter, almost turning into a long strip as it swayed gently. Yin Yang was exasperated and amused at the same time. He finally understood. It looked like this little fellow did not only need the air of injustice to grow, it also needed the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, and the qi of heaven and earth treasures. The difference was that the air of injustice could allow it to grow new leaves and speed up its advancement, while the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, and the spiritual qi of heaven and earth treasures and jades could make it stronger. It's like a child who needs to grow taller and stronger at the same time. Yin Yang understood. Alright, don't do it secretly next time. Just take it openly. But you can't touch it if I need it, or else I won't let you eat any of it in the future. With a swoosh, the leaves unfurled and the seedling's vines swayed happily, as if they were dancing in celebration. Yin Yang could clearly feel the joy radiating from the seedling, and could not help the corners of his lips curling into a smile. A lotus that can understand my words? Yin Yang could not help but chuckle at the thought. Who would believe him if he said it out loud? As if it was a reward, Yin Yang saw the vine shake, and a spot of green light flew out and burrowed into Yin Yang's meridians. Yin Yang felt a rush of coolness as an indescribable vitality filled his meridians. The injury he had suffered from Shiman Wandai's palm strike just now disappeared without a trace. At the same time, he was invigorated and his mind seemed to be clearer than ever. This fellow can help me recover? Yin Yang was overjoyed and asked, can it restore my cultivation base to what it was a year ago as soon as possible? Yin Yang had longed for power for far too long. Without power, there was nothing he could do. The seedling swayed slowly, as if it was shaking its head in disdain. Yin Yang finally understood after asking for a long time. The cultivation base that he had lost would probably not return. After the lotus seed had melted into his blood and devoured all of his cultivation base, it had then sprouted vitality and waited for the heir of injustice to naturally sprout. Besides, the seedling had another meaning. Your original strength is rubbish. You might as well not have it. Yin Yang did not know whether to laugh or cry. Fine, let's start from the beginning. Calling you Tender Sprout or Lotus of Fate all the time is too awkward. Why don't I give you a new name? Yin Yang suggested. You have the shape of a vine, and you have flowers and leaves. Ting Ting, Man Man, Flower, Yi, Lian Lian, Emmy. The seedling only swayed vigorously in disagreement. However, when the last name Emmy appeared, it stopped swaying. After a while it actually nodded its sprout. It actually acknowledged this name. Yin Yang felt a headache coming on. Out of so many names, the one that he thought was the most unpleasant and difficult to accept was probably Emmy. That was why he had put it last. Who would have thought that this name that he thought was extremely unpleasant would be acknowledged instead? Emmy, oh my God. Emmy. Yin Yang slapped his forehead speechless. What a disgusting name I've come up with. In his subconscious, Emmy danced happily. A thin vine was curled into various shapes to celebrate that it finally had a name. Emmy, Yin Yang said, breaking down. You have to think of something. The person in my room has to come back to life. Emmy was stunned for a moment before its vine danced again. Chapter 22. Yin Yang stared at the unconscious man on the bed. This was a burly fellow, tall and well-built. Just by looking at the length of him lying on the bed, one could tell that he would be a mighty man once he stood up. Yin Yang could not help sighing as he examined the man carefully. It was not easy for this fellow to live until now without taking this lying down. At least 20% of his bones were broken. His internal organs were almost torn apart. His dantian was shattered. And his head had obviously been hit hard as a patch of his scalp was dented. There were countless claw marks on his shoulders and back, each one so deep that his bones could be seen. There were even 2 penetrating sword wounds on his chest and back. To be able to hold on to such injuries before fainting in Tiantang City. Yin Yang frowned. He should be an expert on the same level as Lao Mei, or maybe even higher. He placed his hand on the man's wrist and called out in a low voice, Emmy. Immediately, a gush of refined air of vitality gushed out from the lotus of endless fate, and entered the man's body with his hand as a medium. Emmy reluctantly cut off the supply, swaying gently. No matter how Yin Yang urged, it refused to send any more. Enough, it's enough. Not only is he a thief, he's also a miser. Yin Yang was speechless. However, the air of vitality that Emmy had sent out was strong. Although it was only a small amount, Yin Yang could clearly feel that the man's breathing had become much heavier, and his pulse had become stronger. Even his complexion looked much better. Yin Yang cultivated as he waited for the man to wake up. The 1,000 illusion monkey and the 5 kittens were all crowding around him. A monkey, a lightning cat, and 4 high-level baby beasts were actually united and friendly, as if they were a family. They were so tightly packed that not even wind could get through. After a long time, the man on the bed let out a weak, suppressed voice. Where is this? Yin Yang stopped cultivating. He opened his eyes. The man had already woken up and opened his eyes. His eyeballs moved with difficulty as he surveyed his surroundings. This is my home. You've just woken up from your severe injuries. Rest well, Yin Yang said. Thank you, the man said softly. No need. Yin Yang stood up. It's just a small effort. Take care of yourself. He walked out as he spoke. Although he knew that this man could be an expert, Yun Yang did not want to be overly friendly before he knew his background and personality. Beneath the pergola, Yun Yang poured a pot of tea and sipped it slowly. In the room next door, Lao Mei was obviously cultivating. Waves of mystical qi rippled in the air. The sun hung in the sky like blood. Ji Ling's live figure appeared beside him. She asked curiously, "Are you daydreaming here alone?" Yang said, "Because I knew that you would be looking for me." Ji Ling was stunned for a moment before she laughed mockingly. "You could have just said that you were protecting your housekeeper. But you said that I would definitely look for you." "Yun Ling, Yun Yang, you need to be. Since you're not looking for me, why are you here at this time?" Yun Yang asked without batting an eyelid. Ji Ling was stunned and could not help but stomp her foot bitterly. "Fine. I was indeed looking for you." Yun Yang raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" Ji Ling snorted. "There are only a few things that I don't understand." Yun Yang said, "There are 3 things that you don't understand, do you?" Ji Ling replied, "Oh, do you know what I don't understand?" Yun Yang pursed his lips and said faintly, "The first thing is, why did I suddenly clash with Shimin Wandai? With my eyesight, experience, and intelligence, there's no way that I couldn't tell that Shimin Wandai came from an extraordinary background before he announced his name. Why did I insist on clashing with him? Am I right?" Ji Ling was surprised. "That's right indeed. You don't seem like such a reckless person." Yun Yang smiled faintly and said, "The second thing that I don't understand is that after Shimin Wandai revealed his identity, you didn't back down and insisted on the bet. Furthermore, you took all the bets and offended the Shimin family. Am I right?" Ji Ling was even more surprised. "That's right. Your third question should be, I obviously don't have a 9th-level mystical beast cub, but I lied to Shimin Wandai and made him fall into the bet. Furthermore, many people know that I have a 9th-level mystical beast, and these people are all dangerous people. This has undoubtedly put myself and the residents of Yin in an extremely dangerous situation. It could be said that we are at the center of a storm. But why? Am I right?" Yun Yang spoke calmly and methodically. "These people know that I have a 9th-level mystical beast cub, and will definitely think of ways to snatch it away. With my current ability, I won't be able to protect it no matter what. I might even lose the lives of my entire family. Why would I do this? Am I right?" A faint smile appeared on Yun Yang's face. Under the moonlight, his smile was as pure as the moon itself. Ji Ling was even more surprised and anxious. She said, "That's right. You know it very well, but you still did it. What's the reason? How can you defend yourself against the 8 noble families? If this isn't suicide, then what is?" Yun Yang was still smiling and did not speak. Why? Ji Ling was extremely anxious. She had not been able to figure it out at the time, and had always thought that Yun Yang had a deeper meaning. However, even now, she still could not figure out the reason, or how Yun Yang would deal with it. She could not help but jump out to ask about it. She did not expect this fellow to still be so half-dead. It was infuriating to look at him, and make one want to give him a good beating. "Even if I can't defend myself, I still have you, don't I?" Yun Yang smiled. "I don't care." Ji Ling said angrily. "It can't be that, tell me quickly." "You want to know?" Yun Yang finally turned around and looked at her seriously. "Yes." Ji Ling did not hide her curiosity. "But I'm not going to tell you." Yun Yang smiled warmly. "You." Ji Ling finally lost it, and kicked a stone stool away. "Ah." Yun Yang smiled. Of course, from Ji Ling's point of view, Yun Yang's smile was asking for a beating. Yun Yang's heart was filled with helplessness. Offending the Shimin family, and releasing the news of a 9th-level mystical beast cub was of course his intention. However, he could not reveal his true intentions now. If I want to deal with a colossus like the Four Seasons Tower, I have to become stronger first. This was Yun Yang's unwavering belief. Ever since he knew about the existence of the Four Seasons Tower, since he knew that his 800 subordinates and 8 brothers had died under the Four Seasons Tower scheme, Yun Yang had decided what he had to do. A direct confrontation was out of the question. Even if the 9 supremes were resurrected and gathered together, they would not be a match for the mysterious Four Seasons Tower. Even if the entire empire of Yutong were to go against the Four Seasons Tower, this mysterious organization could not be uprooted, because they had never appeared in front of people. You have no idea who is from the Four Seasons Tower. Since this was the case, Yin Yang had decided on his current course of action. I am Supreme Cloud, this identity cannot be exposed. However, Yin Yang's life is too comfortable. Since this is the case, I shall place myself in the midst of the turbulent waves. If I were to be smashed to pieces in the turbulent waves, then I would accept it. However, if I could carve a path out of the turbulent waves, I would be strong enough by then. Moreover, the words 9th level mystical beast would attract countless aristocratic families and cause countless disputes. These were all cards that he could use to his advantage. It all depended on how he would balance it out. The corners of Yin Yang's lips curled into an enigmatic smile. Your father has done too many things like walking a tightrope on a cliff. On the same night, the 7 noble young masters gathered in Yin Yang's courtyard. Indeed, not one of them was absent, and all of them were very excited. This was definitely not an act. The news that Yin Yang had just made a fortune was definitely not a secret. I have summoned you all here because I have a deal to discuss. Yin Yang raised his cup with a smile. Before we discuss, I would like to have a toast first, to wish for a happy cooperation. Cheers! The 7 noble young masters emptied their cups in one gulp. I have just 7th level mystical pills. As you all know, 500 mystical stones and 30 mystical crystals. Yin Yang smiled. Of course, I want to keep 300 mystical stones, so there are still 200 that I need you all to help me sell. I want to keep 20 mystical crystals, and I need your help for the remaining 10 as well. The eyes of the 7 noble young masters lit up abruptly. What a huge fortune. All these I only need gold 3 million taels. The rest of the profits will be divided among the 7 brothers. Yin Yang smiled and said, I have blackmailed you all a few times. This time, I will give you all some benefits. His words were straightforward. However, the more straightforward he was, the brighter the eyes of the 7 young masters shone. Even if these items were not auctioned, it would be totally worth it to keep them in their hands. 2 7th level mystical pills alone were worth 1 million gold taels, and that was the lowest valuation. There were also 200 mystical stones, each valued at 10,000 gold taels. It was also a stable matter, and once the news spread, they could all be sold immediately. As for the remaining 10 mystical crystals, it was a pure profit. In this transaction, each of the 7 of them would earn more than 200,000 gold taels. It was equivalent to Yin Yang, giving each of them millions of silver taels. And this was the lowest estimate. After the surprise, they were confused. They were used to being blackmailed by Yin Yang. When had they ever seen him so generous? Why did he suddenly change this time? Young Master Yin, why? Young Master Ling's mouth was wide open in confusion. This seems like you are at too much of a disadvantage. Let's earn the money together. Yin Yang smiled warmly. I have spent so much of your money, so what is there to be surprised about? It's not like I am at a disadvantage or not. Of course, other than that, some of your family's channels have to help me when I need it. That is enough. What do you think? The 7 young masters looked at each other, immediately knowing what each other was thinking. They nodded in unison. Deal. Although they all knew that this young Master Yun would never be at a disadvantage in anything he did. However, he was giving out such a huge profit, only to ask for their family channels to help him when the time came. This transaction must be done no matter what. Even if the benefits of what Yin Yang asked them to do would far exceed the profits that they had gained this time. This promise was still a must. When the time came, they would have to help as well. Yin Yang smiled in satisfaction. It's that simple. Yin Yang said. Regarding the 3 million gold taels, you can use 2 methods. The first is to give me a portion first, and the rest after you have sold it. The second is even simpler. The 7 families will pool their resources and give me all 3 million gold taels. After that, I don't care how you sell it or how much you sell it for. The 7 of them looked at each other again. Yin Yang's words had a deeper meaning. He would care about the first. He would let go of the second. This was the hidden meaning. Who would be willing to be hindered when doing something? We choose the second. Young Master Ma jumped up. Young Master Yin, the gold tails will be sent to you tonight. Very well. As for how these resources would be divided among the 7 families, it was not Yin Yang's concern. He was only in charge of bringing these items out. For the entire night, the 7 noble young masters engaged in a war of words, arguing until their faces were flushed. In the end, they shook hands reluctantly and glared at each other before smiling obsequiously at Yun Yang, and went home to prepare the gold. The guards of each family had already gathered in front of the residence of Yin. How could they go home with such a huge amount of wealth in their pockets? Even if it was a peaceful era, the 7 young masters would not have the guts to do so. Before the second half of the night, 3 million gold taels were already in Yun Yang's hands. It was all real gold, no banknotes or banknotes. Yun Yang did not want that. The gold was glistening and piled up like a mountain. Chapter 23. I really don't know what to say about you. A mocking voice came from behind him. Yun Yang did not speak. Should I say that you're stupid or foolish? Jiling sighed from behind Yun Yang. No matter how foolish one is, no one would do what you've done today. Yun Yang smiled faintly, not bothering to defend himself. You've actually exchanged an ocean's worth of cultivation resources. Enough for an ordinary person to become an expert in the 3 peaks. For something as useless as gold. Jiling's gaze was as if she was looking at a super idiot. Do you know what you're doing? Perhaps she herself did not realize that her voice was tinged with confusion, doubt, anger, and disappointment. Disappointment. Of course I know what I'm doing. Yun Yang did not turn around as he continued. That's why I said that you and I are people of 2 different worlds. Yun Yang's voice was cold as well. Jiling could not hold it in any longer and said angrily, I don't understand why you're so short-sighted. What's the use of having so much gold? Even if you moved all the gold in the world to your own house, what's the use? Don't you know that in a mystical cultivator's heart, even a piece of mystical stone is more important than all the gold in the world? Because it can increase one's strength. It can increase one's ability to protect oneself. But gold cannot. Jiling took a deep breath to suppress her boiling emotions. She tried hard to restrain herself. I shouldn't be angry. This has nothing to do with me. But Jiling could not hold back her anger. She could not suppress it at all. Yun Yang turned around calmly and looked into Jiling's angry eyes. After a long time he said coldly, What's the point of discussing this between people of 2 different worlds? Jiling choked. Perhaps to you, gold is useless, mystical stones and mystical crystals are useful. Yun Yang's gaze was calm but cold as he said, But to me, gold is more useful than mystical stones. Gold can be used to buy rice, things to fill one's stomach. Mystical stones, on the other hand, cannot. Gold can be changed, mystical stones cannot. So we have 2 different ways of thinking. Yun Yang said, This is not up for debate. It's late, rest early. He turned to leave. Jiling shouted from behind. Then why don't you sell all the mystical stones and mystical crystals? Why are you only selling half of it? If I sell them all, wouldn't I be able to get more gold? Yun Yang chuckled bitterly in his heart. Why wouldn't I want to sell more? The problem was that Amy had stolen them. Profound stones are naturally useful. They can make me stronger, but gold can feed the families of my dead brothers. When I didn't have the power or the capital, Jiling stormed back to her room to sleep. As she lay on the bed in her room, a phrase reverberated in her mind. People from 2 different worlds. People from 2 different worlds. So they are people from 2 different worlds. Jiling thought to herself dejectedly. His views and values are different. Perhaps he has a point. What is there to argue about when it comes to the values of 2 different worlds? Sigh. The second half of the night, a group of a dozen men dressed in black came before Yin Yang soundlessly. Change all this gold into silver. Yin Yang instructed in a low voice. His mood was somber, his gaze cold and unfathomable. No one knew what he was feeling at this moment. 1,000 silver taels for each of the 800 families. Distribute them all tonight. Yin Yang ordered in a low voice. Yes, young master. Other than that, 100 silver taels for the families of the martyrs and veterans in Tiantang City. Yin Yang continued to order. Yes. I don't need to emphasize what to do I? Yin Yang looked at them coldly. We will follow young master's orders. There will be no accidents, no disputes, and no robbery. The leader of the masked men in black said firmly. All right, go ahead. Yin Yang said. Also, continue to pay attention to what I have instructed. Report to me if anyone crosses the line or violates the rules. Yes. The men in black made a few trips to and fro before they transported 90% of the gold. According to their calculations, 90% was already a surplus. Yin Yang threw the rest of the gold in the yard and returned to his room. The cold moonlight illuminated the backyard of the residence of Yin in a glistening yellow. It was a quiet night. On the second day, Jiling seemed to be angry. She stayed in her room to train the little silver moon celestial wolf, holding back her anger and refusing to come out to meet Yin Yang. Yin Yang was glad to have some peace and quiet. He first went to check on the heavily injured man. Then he cultivated and practiced his saber. The seeds of trouble had been sown. They would come at any time. Yin Yang had been prepared from this moment on. Old Marshal Qiu Jianhan had just ended the morning assembly and returned to the residence of Yin Yang with a heavy heart. There was news from the imperial court that the Empire of Dongxian and the Empire of Diyuan were restless. Their target was naturally the Empire of Yutong, the biggest piece of meat in the eyes of the other countries. The war had been going on for so many years, it had almost never stopped. If the war were to break out this time, the Empire of Yutong would not be optimistic. The old marshal heaved a long sigh. Marshal, something strange happened last night. Sir Wang, the advisor of the residence of Yin Yang and the old marshal's old friend, came in with a faint smile, his face calm and gentle. What do you think it is? Old Marshal Qiu sighed. I am so frustrated right now. What is the point of guessing? What is it? Sir Wang could sense that the old marshal was not in a good mood today, so he did not keep the old marshal in suspense anymore. Overnight, the entire Tiantang city was suddenly showered with gold rain again. The old marshal's eyes shone. At least more than half of the families of the 800 warriors, who followed the 9 supremes to war last year suddenly, had a large amount of silver taels appear in their homes. When they woke up, the silver taels would appear and no one knew where they came from. Sir Wang spoke slowly. Once again, something like this has happened. The old marshal's gaze was strange. Not only that, but there were also many families of martyrs and veterans who had silver as well, as if someone was distributing it. Sir Wang was beaming. Old Marshal Qiu Jianhan's eyes shone even brighter. Brother Wang, from what you see, is there a possibility that someone from the 9 supremes is still alive? Sir Wang thought about it and said, this incident does not prove that someone from the 9 supremes is still alive, but the possibility is very high. The old marshal's gaze dimmed when he heard the first half of the sentence, but when he heard the second half of the sentence, his gaze brightened again. However, this person obviously doesn't want to expose himself, Sir Wang said, weighing his words. Qiu Jianhan sighed and said, the death of the 9 supremes is a huge conspiracy. Even with our nation's resources, we haven't found anything. If this person is really one of the 9 supremes, or someone related to the 9 supremes, how would he dare to expose himself so easily? He waved his hand tiredly and said, let's follow the previous method. Don't care, don't ask. Then wipe away all these traces. Sir Wang nodded. All right. Let all the clues end here. The old marshal sighed, his voice sorrowful but resolute. Sir Wang said, I have already given the order. That's good. The old marshal closed his eyes sadly and said softly, is there anyone among the 9 of you still alive? If there is, even if you've been hiding and never appeared, I still hope that you can come and talk to me. This old man misses all of you very much. A few drops of tears seeped out from the corners of old Marshal Qiu's tightly shut eyes. Sir Wang sighed inwardly and retreated quietly. When he reached the door, he thought of something and said, Marshal, about the mystical beast tournament that the noble families have chosen to hold in Tiantang City this time. Qiu Jianhan waved his hand with his eyes closed and said tiredly, "Let them be." Sir Wang knew that old Marshal Qiu was reluctant to say anything more, but he could not help saying, "I heard that Marquis Yun's young master, Yun Yang, had a conflict with the Shiman family in the mystical beast market yesterday. He made a huge bet and won against the Shiman family's young master, almost losing all his fortune." Old Marshal Qiu Jianhan heaved a deep sigh. Let them be about this. Marquis Yun's young master has never been law-abiding in Tiantang City all these years. Let Marquis Yun deal with this. Sir Wang thought about it and wanted to say that there was something fishy about the matter, but seeing how tired the old marshal was, he swallowed his words and retreated. However, after today, he no longer paid attention to such trivialities. A popinjay young master of Tiantang City, a popinjay young master of the Shiman family. What could he have done? In the east wing, the sound of heavy breathing could be heard. It was the heavily injured man, trying to regulate his breathing, trying to channel his mystical qi to heal himself. Yin Yang was not surprised by this, taking it all in stride. Another door opened. Lao Mei walked out with light steps. Have you broken through? Not yet. But I've already taken that half step. Lao Mei was excited. I can definitely break through within half a month. I want to accumulate more, so that I can charge forward more when I break through. Yin Yang nodded. Breaking through the bottleneck was only one aspect. As long as he had the feeling, it would not be difficult. More importantly, after breaking through the bottleneck, his cultivation base would welcome a huge leap. As for this leap, it would depend on the accumulation before the breakthrough. After all, Yin Yang did not have the kind of spiritual medicine that could strengthen one's foundation and allow one to advance by leaps and bounds. Young master, the injured fellow, doesn't seem to be simple. Lao Mei lowered his voice. He is. Yin Yang nodded. Does young master want to forge a good relationship? Lao Mei asked tentatively, or subdue him? Yin Yang flashed a cold smile. This good karma can't be forged. Lao Mei was puzzled. Yin Yang shook his head with a smile. This man had risked his life and gone through so much to obtain 4 9th-level mystical beast cubs. But in the blink of an eye, they had fallen into Yin Yang's hands. How could such a good relationship be forged? Once the other party regained his ability, he would probably return the favor with ingratitude and snatch the 4 cubs away. I only want to subdue him for my use. Yin Yang said honestly. I'm short on manpower now. Lao Mei asked. What if you can't? Yin Yang looked at Lao Mei, a smile like spring water in his eyes as he said slowly. What do you think? Lao Mei felt as if he had been blown by a snowy wind, a chill running from his bones to his skin. If young master wants to subdue him, Lao Mei suggested. Now that he's severely injured and can't move, it's the best time to subdue him. Yin Yang shook his head and said confidently, such methods are no longer suitable for such an expert. You have to use more ingenious methods. Yin Yang chuckled inwardly. An expert who can enter and exit the mystical beast forest alone. An expert who can fight or possibly win against a 9th-level mystical beast. How can he bow down to such worldly small favors? Ingenious methods? Lao Mei was stunned. Yin Yang smiled. The so-called life-saving grace is repaid by burning one's body. Lao Mei, such a scenario only exists in legends. Take you for example. Now that you're severely injured and on the brink of death, you've been saved by another person who treats you well and cares for you meticulously. Would you become his servant because of this? So legends are legends and stories are stories. As humans, we can't be so naive. Chapter 24. Lao Mei scratched his head awkwardly. He was already so old, but to be called naive by a 19-year-old young master. It was a little, however. Lao Mei did feel that compared to his young master, he was indeed a little naive. He had not felt anything for the past few years. Sometimes, he felt that his young master was a little mysterious, and that he did not show his martial prowess. When he saw him, he always looked like he had nothing to do. Other than that, he often went missing. He would disappear for a few months at a time. He knew that his young master was extraordinary, but that was all. However, Ever since his young master had returned a year ago, he had never gone missing again. His intuition as a martial artist told him that his young master was gravely injured and seemed to have lost all his cultivation base. Those injuries could threaten his life at any time. However, his young master did not seem to mind, still looking as idle as ever. Occasionally, late at night, he would see his young master sitting alone from afar. That desolation and loneliness, as well as the occasional glint of coldness in his eyes, it was to let him know that his young master had a huge secret in his heart. Lao Mei dared not ask what had happened. He knew that he would not say anything for his young master's sake. However, his young master's aura was getting stronger. The murderous aura that seemed like it was about to burst out and wreak havoc on the world seemed to be getting stronger as well. Lao Mei suddenly realized something. His young master's calculation ability had exceeded his imagination. There seemed to be nothing he could not see through, nothing he could not solve. It was like playing chess. An ordinary person would be considered an expert if they could see 3 to 4 steps ahead. But his young master could see more than 10 steps ahead, and was still not satisfied. Everything his young master had done in the past year seemed to have a deeper meaning, yet he could not see through it at all. Young master said that I was naive, but it seemed like I really was a little. But what method was young master going to use to subdue this gravely injured person in the East Wing? These 5 kittens. Lao Mei looked at the 5 snow-white kittens that followed closely behind Yun Yang and coughed, stroking his beard. One day of carelessness, and the house would turn into a zoo. Let's just think of them as lightning cats. Yun Yang said, they're quite cute. Cute. Hearing such words from his young master, who was already a scheming man in his heart, Lao Mei suddenly felt that his worldview was not normal. The 1,000 illusion monkey sat on Yun Yang's shoulder. The little fellow was still following Yun Yang closely these few days, but it was obviously not as lively as before. Moreover, as long as the 4 kittens were below, the 1,000 illusion monkey wouldn't come down. A pair of eyes full of vigilance. If it were not for her reluctance to leave Yin Yang's side, she would have fled long ago. Even though it was only a rank difference, the 1,000 illusion spirit monkey still felt threatened by the difference in rank. However, no one noticed this. Yin Yang had already secretly checked on the 4 eclipse panthers. One of them was already a 4th level mystical beast, while the other 2 were 3rd level mystical beasts. The last one was slightly weaker, but it was already at the 2nd level. It was just that these little fellows were obviously under the bloodline invisibility spell. That was the greatest love that high-level Xian beasts had for their offspring. They would use their own bloodline to create a layer of camouflage on their young beasts, making others think that they were very inconspicuous and weak Xian beasts. In this way, before they grew up, no one would have any ideas about them. That would be much safer. However, this kind of bloodline invisibility could only be performed by 9th level Xian beasts at the very least. Yin Yang was completely sure. However, he was like the parents of these 4 little fellows, unwilling to remove the bloodline invisibility spell for them. If he were to remove it, and people found out that he had 4 9th level mystical beast cubs by his side every day, and that he was so weak, Yin Yang was sure that he would not live for more than 2 hours. For safety's sake, continue being cats. Yin Yang stroked the 4 eclipse panthers' furry heads, causing 4 tiny pink tongues to chase after his hand, tickling it. The only real lightning cat was meowing. It had not recovered yet, and was curled up in a corner, unable to compete for Yin Yang's attention. Yin Yang chuckled. Yes, there's one more here. He stroked the lightning cat's head as well. The little fellow lay down contentedly, turning over to reveal its white tummy. As usual, another little fellow sent a stream of chi of life over. Immediately, the ground was filled with little snow-white fur balls rolling around happily. The 1,000 illusion monkey squeaked anxiously on his shoulder. Yin Yang sent one over helplessly as well. Feeling that his pitiful spiritual chi was running low, he quickly stopped. However, the 1,000 illusion monkey was already satisfied. Finding an opening, it leaped down from Yin Yang's shoulder and sprinted towards Ji Ling's room. Suddenly, Yin Yang felt as if there were 2 sharp gazes staring at him. Turning his head, he saw a person's head poking out from the window of the east wing. His eyes were like 2 bolts of lightning. Yin Yang chuckled and turned to walk towards the east wing. The person had already sat up and was leaning against the headboard. Seeing Yin Yang enter, he forced a smile. Yin Yang noticed that this person's hair was no longer as messy as it had been when he had fainted yesterday. It had even been tidied up. Although it was only a simple comb, it was obvious that this person was very mindful of his appearance. Yin Yang also noticed that this person's hands were very clean. He had just woken up from a coma, but there was not a single speck of dirt between his fingernails. "Can you help me wipe my face?" This was the first thing the person said after smiling at Yin Yang. "Cold water will do." Yin Yang nodded sure. He turned and brought in a basin of cold water. He soaked a towel in, wrung it dry, and applied it to the person's face. When the moisture had almost completely seeped in, he took it off and soaked it again before applying it to the person's face. After doing this 5 times, he started to wipe the person's face with a corner of the towel. The person remained calm throughout the entire process. "You are very young," he said quietly, "but you know how to take care of others. But I heard that person call you young master. So you are not a person who takes care of others, but you do." This is a large residence in Tiantang City. There aren't many people here, and I don't see any maids or guards. Also, I heard a woman's voice call you Yin Yang. The person said, "Looks like you are the young master of Marquis Yin in Tiantang City, Yin Yang. But you are the young master of a marquis. How would you know how to take care of others?" The person asked. Yin Yang wiped the person's face and said faintly, "You are not young. Even when you were heavily injured and on the brink of death, you still look to be in your 40s. But your real age should be above 80 years old. In this world, 80 years old and above is considered an old man. Although 80 years old is the prime of your life with your cultivation base, it is not easy for an 80-year-old man in the eyes of the common people to have such a strong curiosity. Also, you are very clean and pay attention to your appearance. I can see that even if you were to die, you want to die cleanly. There are not many people like you in this world. But the part that you pay the most attention to is your hands." Yin Yang wrung the towel. "Although you have been unconscious for a long time, your nails have grown naturally, but they are still very neat. It looks like you are very careful when you are resting. The inside of your right thumb, index finger, and middle finger are softer than other places. Under normal circumstances, this is where you use the most force. If you are a martial artist, you will have calluses whether you practice with a saber or a sword, but you don't. It is not that they have not grown before, but when you have cultivated to a certain level and entered the innate realm, your entire body has been cleansed and regenerated the weakest part of your body. That is why they are more delicate than other places. Your left index finger and middle finger do not show any signs of force being exerted. It is obvious that your left hand has always been pinching the sword. You have not practiced other palm or fist skills, or else there would be traces. You are a very strong person, so you are used to talking down to others. But when you speak, it is filled with a sharp aura. So, you are a swordsman. But there are signs of your left shoulder being raised, and the back of your shoulder is habitually pressed over the years. Therefore, your sword is not worn on your waist, but on your left shoulder. This position must be the best place for you to strike. That is why there is such a condition on your left shoulder. Half of the mystical chi cultivation base in your body has been converted into sword chi." Yin Yang continued, "So other than your sword, you have nothing else. Your gaze is very sharp. It is a habit of staring at the tip of a sword. You practice your sword by staring at the tip of your own sword. So even when you do not use a sword, when you have no sword in your hand, when you are severely injured and unable to use your strength, you will still have this kind of threatening aura. But your gaze is straight and clear. So, you are not a malicious person, and you are not someone who will do anything to achieve your goal. Your sword is not with you, and the web between your thumb and index finger on your right hand is severely torn. The bone is broken, so I guess your sword is broken. No sword, and you are unwilling to reveal your identity. I cannot guess your exact identity. Swordsman, never trained in anything else. Carrying a sword, striking with a strange sword technique, very upright, doesn't steal or rob, loves cleanliness, pays attention to appearance, relies on the strength of both hands to make a living. But you are definitely a martial artist, not belonging to any country. On the surface, you don't seem to be related to assassins, and you are very skilled. Yun-yang said, according to what I know, there are a total of 3 people like you. The man's gaze was filled with amazement as he could not help asking, which 3? One of them is already dead. Yun-yang said, if it is him, I can recognize him even if he is burnt to ashes. The other one is a legendary figure, a pinnacle expert. Such an expert would not be injured like this. As for you, you are related to mystical beasts. So, there is only one person who fits your identity. Yun-yang smiled and said, the famous mystical beast hunter, fealty jade sword Fang Mafei. Old Sir Fang, am I right? The severely injured man on the bed was already staring at Yun-yang with wide eyes, as if he had seen a ghost. He had always kept a low profile, and was not well known. He had always been a lone ranger and had no friends, so there should not be many people who knew him. However, this youth in front of him did not know him, had never seen him before. He was also severely injured and could not move, and his appearance had been altered. Yet, he had been able to recognize him with just a pair of eyes. He knew that this youth had not observed him in detail before this. He had only observed and analyzed him to be able to recognize him. Although the content was slightly repetitive and messy, the final result was correct. This was simply inconceivable. Fang Mafei had never known that there were so many flaws in him. He knew that the reason why this young man had said so much to verify his identity was because he had deduced his identity the moment they met. That was why he had done so. He had used a seemingly meticulous deduction to deduce this youth's identity the moment they met. He had only wanted to gain the upper hand by making a show of strength, to intimidate this seemingly inexperienced fellow. He wanted to establish his image as an expert who could foresee everything, to pave the way for him to recuperate here in the future. Chapter 25. Fang Mafei stared for a long time, unable to catch his breath. What amused Yun-yang was that this great swordsman Fang had fainted with his eyes wide open. His body was too weak after all. Under the intense shock, he couldn't take it anymore. So he fainted in embarrassment. Why is it that when people interact with others, they always have to think of ways to gain a psychological advantage? Yun-yang murmured. Fang Mafei had used his intelligence to find out Yun-yang's identity when he could not move. He had wanted to gain the upper hand. What Yun-yang was going to say next was also to gain a psychological advantage. In the yard, Jiling had already walked out with the Silvermoon Celestial Wolf. The tiny snow-white Silvermoon Celestial Wolf followed behind her, tumbling all over the place. It was obvious that it was very dependent on her. These children of noble families are extraordinary indeed. Yun-yang looked out the window and thought to himself, it's only been a night, and they've made the Silvermoon Celestial Wolf, who is known to be rebellious and wary of others, feel a sense of belonging. Yun-yang, Jiling called out from the yard. These cats of yours are strange. Yun-yang looked at the cowering Silvermoon Celestial Wolf in the yard, then at the 4 eclipse panthers lying on the ground, snoring. The corners of his mouth twitched. Yun-yang went out. Looking at Jiling, who seemed to have reverted to her original self, Yun-yang smiled faintly. He could feel the difference in Jiling after she had readjusted her mentality during this period of time. It was a faint sense of alienation. 2 different worlds. Yun-yang smiled inwardly and walked out as if nothing had happened. What is it? Why doesn't my wolf dare to go over? Jiling asked. Wolves are social animals and are used to moving around in packs. This one is small, has no companions, and has never battled before. It would be strange if it dares to go over when facing 5 cats of similar size. Yun-yang rolled his eyes. Then how do you plan to help me win? Jiling asked. That is a secret, Yun-yang said lazily. I can only guarantee your victory. Also, you have to promise me that you will not go back on your word. Jiling rolled her eyes and said, You are so stingy. All right, I'll remember it. Looking at the young Silvermoon Celestial Wolf, Yun-yang squatted down and beckoned. Little fellow, come here. It won't listen to you so easily. Jiling smiled. I spent a lot of effort yesterday. Before he could finish his sentence, he was suddenly dumbfounded. The tiny silver-moon celestial wolf suddenly straightened its body and looked at Yun Yang, its tail wagging like a puppy. Then it sprinted towards Yun Yang like an arrow. It was even purring excitedly. Jiling was stunned. This is too infuriating. He had worked so hard to please her, and even took out his most precious elixirs. Finally, the little fellow had changed from being indifferent to being somewhat affectionate. But this guy just hooked his finger, and the little guy actually ran over happily, as if he had seen his own mother. There was no justice in this world. Yun Yang carried the silver-moon celestial wolf, his right hand gently caressing its back. Then with a flutter, he flipped the small body over and dangled it in the air, with only its left front paw in his hand. He even shook it forcefully. What are you doing? Jiling shrieked, and was about to rush forward. How dare you play with such a small cub? You could kill it if you used too much force. The little silver-moon celestial wolf howled excitedly, shaking its head and tail happily, while being held by one paw. Yun Yang tossed it into the air like a ball, his right hand stretched out, grabbing its right front paw, and swinging it in the air. Jiling was speechless. The ball-like wolf cub flew in the air again. Its left rear paw. It flew again. Its right rear paw. Then it flew again. Its neck. Jiling was about to go crazy. This is a wolf, not a cat. What do you mean by grabbing the back of its neck and swinging it around like this? Jiling could clearly hear the bones in the wolf cub's body cracking. My little wolf cub. Jiling's eyes were red from heartache. Finally, she saw Yun Yang toss the wolf cub into the air again. This time, he grabbed its tail and shook it violently. The wolf cub shrieked and danced excitedly. Its 4 snow-white hooves clawed wildly in the air. It was so lively. Yun Yang. Jiling could not bear it any longer. Are you playing tricks with my wolf cub? Yun Yang turned his head and smiled. Can't you see that this little fellow is going crazy with joy? Jiling was speechless. All right. Yun Yang said. Leave your little Beishi with me for 2 days. You can take it to the competition after 2 days. If you can't win then, I'll do whatever you want me to do. Of course, if you win, you have to fulfill the conditions you promised me. Jiling could not help but sigh. Do you have to keep talking about conditions? Yun Yang said with a smile. It's better to be practical. Jiling was deep in thought. After a long time, she carried the 1,000 illusion monkey back to the room. Yun Yang smiled as he carried the wolf cub into the room. Patting the little wolf cub's head, he said, I know you understand, little guy. That's it. Today, you helped your master win, so I'll give you another round as a reward. Do you understand? The wolf cub looked at Yun Yang with sparkling eyes and wagged its tail. You don't understand? Yun Yang's expression darkened. He grabbed the wolf cub by the scruff of its neck and picked it up like a rag. Do you understand? Carry it again if you win. Do you understand? The wolf cub blinked twice with its sparkling eyes. Suddenly, it raised its left front paw and lifted it up. Then it raised its right front paw and lifted both its hind hooves. It turned around and faced Yun Yang with its tail raised high. Putting it down, it hopped twice to indicate that it wanted to be picked up and shaken. Then, it looked at Yun Yang with sparkling eyes. Yes. Yun Yang was exasperated. Oh, the wolf cub howled in delight. The conditions had been met. Yun Yang heaved a sigh of relief. The intelligence of mystical beasts was not low after all. However, this silver-moon celestial wolf's intelligence had exceeded Yun Yang's expectations. Looking at the wolf's clear eyes, Yun Yang murmured, This can't be the descendant of the alpha wolf, can it? This girl's luck shouldn't be this good. May I ask if young Master Yun Yang is at home? A booming voice came from outside. Lao Mei stood up in response. Who is it? The voice outside replied, Please inform young Master Yun Yang that Shiman Wandai of the Shiman family, Dongfeng Mingtian of the Dongfeng family, Nangong Bubi of the Nangong family, and Bei Qingkong of the Bei family are here to visit. Lao Mei's expression changed. Shiman Wandai, Dongfeng Mingtian, Nangong Bubi and Bei Qingkong. East, south, west and north. Perhaps these 4 names were not very famous. At least, Lao Mei had never heard of them before. However, these 4 surnames were too shocking. 4 of the 8 pinnacle families. The one who had bet with the young master was Shiman Wandai. Shiman Wandai was the young master of the Shiman family. Thus, Dongfang Mingtian, Nangong Bubi, and Bei Qingkong must be the young masters of the other 3 families. Although they might not be the backbone of the direct line of descent, their identities were still superior. With a wave of Yin Yang's hand, the 5 kittens obediently made their way to the east wing. Invite the 4 young masters in, Yin Yang said. Tea will be served in the parlor. The parlor was, of course, the pavilion under the pergola in Yin Yang's courtyard. Shadows of flowers danced in the breeze, their fragrance permeating the ground. Yin Yang held the teapot with one hand, and said in a composed manner, "It is my honor to have the 4 young masters grace my humble dwelling with your presence. This is the spring tea that I have just received this year. It is harvested from the peak of a snowy mountain, amidst the snowstorm and fog. The tender shoots of the ivy must be plucked when they are covered in a thin layer of frost, dried in the shade on the cold mountain, and roasted in a cool place. After 3 times of steaming and 3 times of drying, it is placed in the ice cave of the cold mountain to absorb the spiritual and icy air. Then, it is dried at high temperature and immediately becomes tea. Only this tea can't be kept for long. It can only be kept for a month. Otherwise, the cold air will return, and the tea will be wasted." The translucent emerald tea in Yin Yang's teapot gushed out like a round jade, and fell into the teacup, solidifying into a crystal-clear piece of jade. The surface of the tea was foggy, as if it was a dream. "This tea is called Snow of the Cold Mountain." Yin Yang raised his cup and smiled. Please serve the tea." The 4 noble young masters had arrived at the residence of Yin, but before they could even say a word, they were instilled with the art of tea. Furthermore, it was explained in a logical manner, making it rather captivating. Tasting this cup of tea, they were filled with mixed feelings. In the west wing, Jiling watched from the window and sighed inwardly. She could vaguely feel that among the 5 people drinking tea in the parlor, Yin Yang, who was the weakest and had the least ability, was more like an elite of a noble family. That elegance, that bearing, that composure. It was many levels higher than the 4 noble young masters in front of her. It was simply incomparable. Jiling thought about it carefully. It seemed that even the backbone of the 8 noble families, the direct heirs, might not have Yin Yang's elegance and composure. That was the calmness in his bones. Young Master Yin is indeed elegant. Good composure. Dongfang Mingtian drank the cup of tea that he could not taste and smiled faintly. No wonder Brother Shiman lost to you. Hatred flashed in Shiman Wandai's eyes as he smiled faintly. A bet is a bet. Young Master Yun's victory is a testament to your ability, and I accept my loss wholeheartedly. Yin Yang smiled warmly. Young Master Shiman is too courteous. I was just lucky. Besides, young Master Shiman's magnanimity and easygoing manner have impressed me greatly. Ever since that day, I have always wanted to meet young Master Shiman and befriend you. As he said this, Shiman Wandai's expression relaxed a lot. Of course, all of you young masters are as famous as young Master Shiman. I would very much like to befriend you as well, Yin Yang said sincerely. No matter how disdainful the young masters were, they looked much better, and the atmosphere became harmonious. Perhaps, among all these people, only Ji Ling, who was eavesdropping from the window, understood the true meaning behind Yin Yang's words. I really hope to befriend all of you, so that I can get more benefits from you all. Looking at Yin Yang's sincere expression and the young master's humble words, Ji Ling almost burst out laughing. She felt more and more that these noble young masters were incomparable to Yin Yang, the young master of a secular country's marquis. It was strange indeed. These elites of noble families had received strict education since they were young, and every word and action had been specially trained. Yet they were not as composed and scheming as Yin Yang. Chapter 26. Jiling searched through her memories, and could only think of a few people who could compare to Yin Yang's steady demeanor. Her own family's old forefathers, elders who were widely acknowledged to be exceptionally intelligent, and had gone through countless hardships in the mortal world, and the think tanks of each family, There were not many people like them. However, Jiling knew very well how these people had managed to achieve their current achievements through experience. Countless battles of life and death, countless parting of life and death, countless heartbreaks, countless hopeless situations. Only then could a person be trained to be calm and collected no matter what he faced. No matter who he faced, he would be neither servile nor overbearing. No matter what he faced, he would be farsighted. No matter how good or bad the situation was, his heart would be as deep as a blue pool, unfathomable. However, Yin Yang was only 19 years old. How did he do it? Jiling was very curious about this. Yin Yang seemed to be full of secrets. Despite his young age, he was as steady and wise as a 1,000-year-old demon. His grace and demeanor were impeccable, and the way he treated people was flawless. However, no one could find a single flaw in Yin Yang from his manner of speaking, demeanor, and demeanor. We have come this time to witness young Master Yun's splendor. The real topic of conversation had finally begun. Bei Qingkong was the first to speak. Secondly, we are naturally curious. Young Master Yun's shocking gamble that day, using a 9th-level mystical beast's infant as the wager, has shocked the world. He rubbed his hands together in embarrassment. I am ashamed to say this. Although we come from noble families, we have never seen a 9th-level mystical beast's infant. His words immediately garnered the agreement of the other 3 young masters. Yes, I have never seen one either. A 9th-level mystical beast is too mysterious. I would love to see it. Sigh, if it wasn't for this, I wouldn't have lost so badly that day. How can I not see it? Shiman Wandai was the last to speak, sighing. There was a tinge of helplessness in his voice. If it was possible, he would have come himself. However, the other 3 fellows followed him closely, refusing to let Shiman Wandai take the spoils for himself no matter what. If it weren't for these burdens, Shiman Wandai would have rushed over on the very afternoon he lost the bet. The few young masters were all smiles as they spoke, but the atmosphere in the air suddenly became oppressive. Jiling held her breath at the window, not knowing how Yin Yang would answer. These fellows were all smiles and amiable. But if Yin Yang could not produce the 9th-level mystical beast cub, the entire residence of Yin would be wiped off the face of this world. There would be no fluke. These people were actually here to denounce him. Or rather, they were here to divide the spoils. If Yin Yang could not produce a 9th-level mystical beast infant, he was doomed. Even if he took it out, he would still be dead. As long as he took it out, it would definitely cause the 4 young masters to fight over it. No matter who it ended up in, Yin Yang, the original owner, would not be able to survive. The current gentleness of these people was just the prelude to the storm. A 9th-level mystical beast's offspring. Yin Yang smiled. It is indeed something good. I find it hard to believe that the 4 young masters have not seen it before. However, I have not seen it before. It is true. As these words left his mouth, the atmosphere in the courtyard suddenly became icy cold. The air itself seemed to freeze. The expressions of the 4 young masters changed. You have not seen it before. Shiman Wandai's face turned the color of a pig's liver, his gaze turning frenzied. Taking a deep breath, he said darkly, Young Master Yin, I do not quite understand what you are saying. Since young Master Yin has not seen a 9th-level mystical beast infant, then what is it that you are betting with me? The other 3 young masters stared at Yin Yang without blinking. I have lost the bet, of course I can produce it. Yin Yang was calm, and even a little provocative. But now that I have one, so what if I say that I have not seen it before? Shiman Wandai felt a wave of anger rush to his head. If you have not seen it, then you do not have a 9th-level mystical beast infant. What right do you have to bet? Yin Yang smiled. First, I can win. As long as I win, that is enough. Second, young Master Shiman, who told you that not having seen it means that it does not exist? This sentence made everyone a little confused. Not having seen it did not mean that it did not exist? Dongfang Mingtian's expression changed as he retracted his icy smile, replaced with the warmth of spring. Brother Yin, could it be that Brother Yin has another explanation? We'd like to hear it. Yin Yang smiled faintly and refilled the teapot, saying, Actually, I do not need to explain this matter. If I had made a bet with an ordinary person, a win is a win and a loss is a loss. Naturally, there would not be so many issues. However, since the few young masters have come knocking on my door, I am afraid that it will be troublesome if I do not explain. I might as well waste my breath. Shimin Wandai's face was as red as a pig's liver as he said, "It is not that I am a sore loser, but I hate being deceived. Deceiving is a little too much." Yin Yang said seriously, "If young Master Shimin had won and I could not produce a 9th-level mystical beast infant, then that would be deceiving. The problem now is that young Master Shimin did not win." This is actually not important. Yin Yang said, Please have some tea. To gamble, one must have the money to gamble. Without the money, it is a fraudulent bet. I believe this is what young Master Shimin is worried about." The young masters thought to themselves, who else would come if not worried about this? Isn't that obvious? "I have indeed not seen a 9th-level mystical beast infant," Yin Yang said with certainty. Yin Yang answered with certainty, "It's true. I've never seen it since I was young." Boom. Another explosion ensued. "No matter what you say, you still haven't King seen one." However, Yin Yang's tone was heavy as he said, "I have a 9th-level upper mystical beast egg that is currently incubating." Shimin Wandai felt as if he had punched the air with all his might. There was no need to mention the discomfort he felt. "Where is the mystical beast egg?" Nangong Booby asked with narrowed eyes. Yin Yang smiled faintly and glanced at him. The 4 noble young masters understood that the other party would not reveal such a matter so easily. If young Master Yin is unwilling to reveal it, could it be that there really isn't one? Bei Qingkong said sarcastically, "Young Master Bei does not need to provoke me. I will say what I need to say." Yin Yang smiled. "It's just that I do not wish to clash with the noble families, or rather, I do not wish for the young masters to send themselves to their deaths." "Send themselves to their deaths?" Shimin Wandai chuckled coldly. "Young Master Yin, aren't you a little too arrogant?" Yin Yang looked at Shimin Wandai meaningfully. "Would young Master Shimin be willing to bet with me again?" There was a hint of disdain in his eyes. Facing the 4 noble young masters, there was actually a hint of arrogance and provocation. Shimin Wandai's face paled. "Bet again? If he were to lose again, he would not be able to live anymore." Dongfang Mingtian quickly tried to smooth things over, laughing. "If we were to bet again, we would really become gamblers. Brother Yin, since we are here, don't keep us in suspense. We all want to be friends with Brother Yin. It would be bad for both parties if there were any misunderstandings, don't you think?" In his heart, however, he was thinking, "Is this fellow threatening us? Where does he get his confidence from?" Yin Yang's smile was meaningful as he said, "That's right. It would not be good for anyone if there were to be a conflict. I was too impulsive in the matter of the 9th-level mystical beast's offspring," Yin Yang said slowly. "I regretted it the moment the words left my mouth. I wanted to admit defeat to Brother Shimin and stop the bet. I could just say that I didn't have it, and the matter would have passed without so much trouble. It's a pity." Everyone's gazes fell on Shimin Wandai's face, causing him to flush red. He was the one who had insisted on the bet, his eyes turning red when he heard about the 9th-level mystical beast's offspring. "This involves the secret of the Yin family," Yin Yang said. "I won't go into the details, but this 9th-level mystical beast's egg is the egg of a golden-winged bird. The egg of a golden-winged bird." The 4 noble young masters' breathing quickened. It was said that one of the strongest mythical beasts in this world was the rock golden-winged bird. Its magical power was boundless, and it could destroy heaven and earth. Of course, it only existed in ancient legends, and no one had ever seen it. This golden-winged bird was not the rock golden-winged bird, but a mystical beast with a thin trace of mythical bloodline. Once it matured, it would be a 9th-level upper-level mystical beast. What was even rarer was that it was a flying mystical beast. My master has always wanted to find a stronger mystical beast's offspring for me. Firstly, it would accompany me as I grow, and secondly, it would allow me to protect myself after he passes away. Yin Yang said slowly. There was a hint of admiration on his face. "Your master?" Dongfang Mingtian caught on to the main point. May I ask who Brother Yun's master is? Dongfeng Mingtian asked. Yun Yang pondered for a moment, then reached into his robes and took out a small black wooden token, placing it lightly on the table. Everyone looked over and saw that the small black wooden tablet was completely black, but upon closer inspection, it seemed to have a faint luster. As they continued to look, it seemed to be twinkling faintly like starlight. It seemed to be an ancient starry sky, and in the farthest place, there seemed to be a flickering luster. Stellar wood of onyx? Dongfeng Mingtian shuddered. That's right, it is the stellar wood of onyx, also known as the stellar veil of onyx. Yun Yang's tone was deliberately indifferent as he continued. My master's handwriting is on it. Young masters, please keep it in your hearts when you see it. Today, I have no choice but to show this token, and it is already a great insult to my school. If word of this were to spread, I'm afraid my master will be very angry. The four noble young masters could feel the undisguised threat in Yun Yang's words. They felt an inexplicable sense of oppression. It was as if the small black wooden token weighed more than 1,000 caddies, and it was filled with endless authority. Ever since Yun Yang took out this small wooden token, Dongfeng Mingtian and the others had no more doubts. The stellar wood of onyx was a rare treasure in this world. What was even rarer was that only one tree had appeared in this world in the past millions of years. And there was only one person who owned and used this tree. Other than this person, no one else could come into contact with the stellar wood of onyx. Therefore, once the stellar wood of onyx appeared, it represented that person. The wooden token turned slowly, and the 4 sentences behind it pierced into the eyes of the 4 noble young masters like lightning. At this moment, all 4 of their pupils shrunk abruptly. The 4 little faces turned completely white with a swoosh. Early as a guest from the heavens, half a step into the ethereal realm, but for the sake of a beauty, 1 step behind the rosy clouds. Only these 4 sentences. Other than that, there was no other identification. However, as long as these 4 sentences were present, it was enough in the Tianxian continent. This meant that this person was an earth-shattering figure. Furthermore, he was someone that even the 8 noble families like the Dongfeng and Shimen families could not afford to offend. The only legend in this world. He was a legend who could break through the void and ascend to the upper realm 500 years ago. He had once dominated the Tianxian continent for 300 years without a rival. He was number 1 in the heaven leaderboard. Chapter 27. Legend had it that Duga Cho was invincible and lonely in the mortal world. However, just as he was about to break through the void, he met a peerless beauty. He fell into the trap of love. Unfortunately, this beauty was physically weak and could not cultivate. Duga Cho took good care of her and spent 10 years with her. Finally, the beauty passed away. Heartbroken and disheartened, Duga Cho went into seclusion. He built a hut beside his dead wife's grave. The only stellar wood of onyx in this world was behind his dead wife's grave. It was like a giant umbrella that covered the sky, covering the grave and the grass. If I had been a heavenly guest, I could have been a heavenly guest. Half a step into the ethereal realm. As long as I wanted to, I could have taken the other half step. But for the sake of the beauty, I was too late. That was how it was. Since then, the world had never seen Duga Cho again. However, there were too many legends about Duga Cho in this world. Later on, Tianxian continent was filled with experts, deified and legendary experts. But no one's reputation could surpass Duga Cho's. Titles such as the unrivaled expert or unrivaled swordsman would change every few years, but no one dared to claim the title of unrivaled expert of the age. In the human realm where there was no first in literature and no second in martial arts, this was the one and only legend. Looking at the plaque, recalling the legend and the name, the 4 young masters were completely dumbfounded. They could only feel their heads buzzing. 4 pairs of eyes stared at Yun Yang with wide eyes, shock written all over their faces. Legend had it that the stellar wood of onyx was the symbol of Duga Cho's identity. There was only one such piece in this world. Now the onyx wood was in their hands. Dongfeng Mingtian felt like his palm had been scalded by a piece of red-hot metal. He put the stellar wood of onyx down quickly, the smile on his face turning into an odd one. The four young masters' chuckles turned dry as well. Brother Yin Yu and Senior Dugu? Yin Yang sighed, his face full of respect. This is the token my master gave me. It's also a greeting gift. Yin Yang's skills are lacking, and I still have to rely on my master's name to stay alive. I've let my master down. The four young masters felt their minds go blank. What were they here for today? They were not here to make friends. Why would Dugacho suddenly appear out of nowhere? How were they supposed to play? This 9th level profound beast cub. What to do with it? Dongfang Mingtian sucked in a breath of cold air as his face stiffened. Forcing a smile, he said, "This who would have thought? Cough cough, Brother Yin, you have such a master, how could you?" Hehehe. Shiman Wandai came to a sudden realization. That's right, if you had such a master, why is your cultivation so low now? These were all young masters of aristocratic families. They were knowledgeable, and could tell at a glance that Yin Yang's physique was not bad. But his cultivation base was extremely weak. Not to mention the experts of the 5 or 6 mountains. He probably hadn't even climbed half of the mountain yet. It was so weak that it was unimaginable. Yin Yang chuckled meaningfully and said, "Perhaps what all of you are more curious about is not this, but why Master would take me in as a disciple. Or perhaps, he still has doubts about this matter." The four young masters shook their heads like rattledrums. No, it would be weird if he didn't. Yin Yang smiled and said, "My physique is not suitable for cultivation." Under the 4 pairs of dumbfounded gazes, Yin Yang said leisurely, "Mistress and I have the same physique." Oh. The 4 of them heaved a long sigh of relief. They finally understood. Why would an immortal of a generation accept such a useless disciple? So that was it. It was still the obsession in his heart. Although I'm blessed by the heavens, my meridians are a mess. I can't cultivate them, so. Yin Yang sighed dejectedly. Master has destroyed all my meridians. Now they're growing again. I wonder how far they'll grow. It was for my safety that Master searched for 9th level mystical beast cub all over the world. Finally, he sent word 3 months ago that he had won. Yin Yang lifted his head to look at Shiman Wandai. So I dared to bet with you. But I didn't dare to and wanted to retreat. Young Master Shiman, have all your doubts been answered now? Yes. Shiman Wandai was a little flustered. By now, the doubts in everyone's hearts had indeed all been resolved. Looking at Yin Yang, they could not help but feel conflicted. This fellow was very lucky to have a master whom no one could afford to offend. But it was a pity that he himself was a good-for-nothing. His master had taken him in as a disciple because of his inner demons. His meridians were the same as his mistress. To put it bluntly, he was only a test subject for his master. Even his meridians had been destroyed to cultivate again. All in all, Yin Yang was fortunate, but also unfortunate. The 4 young masters made their judgment at the same time. What Yin Yang said was true. Dugacho was really his master. Otherwise, the stellar wood of onyx would never be in his hands. In this world, only Dugacho could have the stellar wood of onyx. Furthermore, the wood had been found at his deceased wife's grave, so Dugacho had treated it like a treasure. Even if a nation's emperor or a martial world's most respected individual were to ask for it, he would never agree to it. In that case, the egg of the 9th level mystical beast, the golden-winged bird, should be real as well. In this world, other than Dugacho, they could not think of anyone else who could match the golden-winged bird's speed, let alone kill it and obtain its egg. Combined with Yin Yang's conflicted expression after being provoked on the day of the bet, and regretting it later on, the 4 young masters were even more certain of the truth of the matter. If I had misspoken, I would have regretted it too. I would have rushed to deny it and ruin the bet. However, if that was the case, the family's original plan to deal with the residents of Yin could not be used. Therefore, the 4 young masters had decided on a strategy to deal with Yin Yang in their minds. They could not be too harsh with Yin Yang, but they could not be too close to him either. However, killing him was out of the question. Although Yin Yang's master was amazing, he obviously did not have a bright future. Everyone could see that. Dongfang Mingtian thought to himself, "Let's get along first, don't offend him." But don't get too close either. Wait until his 9th level mystical beast arrives, and see if it's true. What if he's lying now? Wouldn't it be a joke for eternity, if he were to get close to him? Shiman Wandai thought. If his master is Duga Cho, it's fine to lose to him. But it's impossible to get too close to him. It's also impossible to recoup the loss from his hands. Thinking of the loss, young Master Shiman's expression was rather ferocious. His eyes darted around, his thoughts unknown. Nangong Booby looked like a brute, but he was thinking, if I can form a good relationship, even if I can't be related to Duga Cho, just the identity of Duga Cho's disciple, maybe it's possible? But this young Master Yun's temperament is quite to my liking. If I can befriend him sincerely, it doesn't seem impossible. Bei Qingkong was thinking. If I wait for the 9th level mystical beast cub to arrive and kill Yun Yang without anyone knowing, wouldn't the cub be mine? A 9th level mystical beast cub needs at least 100 years to grow. I'll hide it during this period of time. Duga Cho isn't a god. How could he know? The 4 young masters each had their own thoughts. Yun Yang had already kept the stellar wood of onyx token. Once the token was in his robe, it disappeared without a trace, and turned into a saber embroidered on Yun Yang's sleeve. How could Yun Yang have the stellar wood of onyx token? He was not Duga Cho's disciple either. However, Yun Yang felt that it was no big deal to use this name to protect himself, for a period of time, with the ever-changing ability of the divine edge. Duga Cho wouldn't know anyway. Besides, what could he do even if he knew? Yun Yang could not care less. Even if the whole world is against me, I won't care. What more you, Duga Cho? Although Yun Yang tried to persuade them to stay, the 4 young masters still left. After a warm farewell, and setting a date for their next meeting, the 4 young masters left. They had come with their heads held high and chests puffed out, but they left quietly and amicably. They had wanted to snatch the 9th level mystical beast cub first, and then flatten the Yun family. Who would have thought that they would be shouldering a huge threat instead? Duga Cho. Thinking of this name, the 4 young masters felt like they had been F***ed. To think that the 8 noble families were supreme, although we 4 young masters were not the direct heirs of our families. In this continent, even the princes of the 5 empires had to be courteous when they saw us. Even cautious. Who would have thought that they would meet something like this today? For a moment, the 4 young masters were filled with resentment towards the person who had held the mystical beast tournament in Tiantang City this year. What city could you have held it in? Why did it have to be held in Tiantang City? What a shame. His prestige had fallen to the ground. King Hell. Looking at the silhouettes of the 4 young masters leaving, Yun Yang squinted his eyes slightly, thousands of thoughts flashing through his mind. First, I stirred up a storm. Then I brought out a god to suppress their restless hearts. However, the storm is still the storm. The source of the chaos is still in my hands. From today onwards, at least I, Yun Yang, have a place in all of your hearts. That is enough. It seems that I can begin now. Just as the 4 of them left, Jiling jumped out and asked Yun Yang with wide eyes, "Are you Senior Duga Cho's disciple?" Her big, pretty eyes were filled with disbelief. Yun Yang stroked his chin. "Show me your true face and I'll tell you." Pfft. Jiling raised her head. "Who wants to know?" Yun Yang was alarmed. He had managed to fool these fellows into leaving just now, and the crisis had passed. But he was actually feeling a little unsettled. Had he been joking with his words just now? This would not do. With a thought, he changed the topic with a smile. "Is your wolf cub obedient now?" His words drew all of Jiling's attention as she said excitedly, "Not bad. What did you do?" "The cub is so obedient that I'm over the moon, haha." As she spoke, she released the wolf cub and ordered it to perform actions and imitate her. She even ordered the cub to stand up, walk on its hind legs, walk on its front legs. Yun Yang felt a little dizzy. Chapter 28. A woman's brain is truly the most inexplicable in this world. Yun Yang murmured to himself. "I've named the wolf cub, Little Yeya. What do you think?" Jiling asked excitedly. "Little Yeya?" The corners of Yin Yang's lips twitched, his words insincere. "What a good name. That's great." Jiling's eyes widened. unable to rebuke this hypocritical and perfunctory fellow. However, she quickly grew excited again. But with little Yi's current coordination, it'll be a piece of cake for me to win. I'm definitely going to be the big sister this time. You're going to win? Yin Yang asked curiously. Is the Mystical Beast Tournament a competition of pet training? How fun is that? You've made it sound so grand earlier. Of course I'm going to win. Ji Ling was full of confidence. Since you're going to win, Yin Yang was puzzled. Then why aren't you leaving? Why are you hanging around here? Ji Ling's jaw dropped. The smile on her face froze. What a twist. She had never seen such an uncouth man. Have you fallen for me? Yin Yang took a step back in fear. Miss, I'm still young and... Go to hell. Ji Ling flew into a rage. Yin Yang hugged his right leg and jumped up, baring his teeth. Why did you hit me when we were talking nicely? Ji Ling glared at him with her teeth clenched. Who's hanging on to you? I'll leave. Lowering her head, she dashed out with the wolf cub in her arms. Her eyes were rimmed red. This bastard. This? Sigh. Yin Yang called out from behind her. Ji Ling stopped in her tracks, her heart filled with hope. What else do you want? Aren't you going to chase me away? She thought that this fellow must be apologizing. Don't forget our deal. Yin Yang said seriously. You have to do it if you win. It's very important. Ji Ling's body trembled violently as she flew out with a swoosh. From afar she said, I, Ji Ling, am not one to go back on my word. She had disappeared. There was a thick nasal sound in her voice. Yin Yang stood quietly for a while and smiled faintly, murmuring, It's good that you remember. I was just afraid that you'd forget. Lao Mei stood behind Yin Yang, sighing deeply as he watched Yin Yang's silhouette, hugging his head with both hands. Young master, you're destined to be single for life. He could let him go. But why did he have to use such a method? Watching Ji Ling leave, Yin Yang's eyes flickered and his expression darkened, as if he had suddenly put on a mask. He looked a little solemn. Young master. Lao Mei sighed softly behind him. You have hurt Miss Ji's heart. Yin Yang exhaled and said faintly, There's nothing to be sad about. We're from two different worlds anyway. Little girls may not understand much, but I want to understand. Lao Mei was confused. Sensible? Yin Yang said faintly. Lao Mei, what is Miss Ji's background like? You should be able to tell, right? Lao Mei nodded and sighed. You know what they have to face if they truly love each other, don't you? Yin Yang asked. Lao Mei sighed again. Besides, at least for now, this Miss Ji has not taken a liking to me, has she? At most it's just a vague and unformed feeling. I feel that this person isn't bad, quite interesting. But that's all there is to it? Yin Yang said. Lao Mei sighed again. Yin Yang was right. That was all there was to it. There was no liking or admiration. He just felt that she wasn't bad. However, this could develop. So, why should we continue to be entangled and look for trouble? Yin Yang smiled, his gaze distant, calm and cold. Young master is right. Lao Mei still sighed inwardly. Yin Yang said, So this isn't it good? There was no ripple in his heart. But he thought to himself, My brother's death has yet to be avenged, my 8 brothers. 800 brothers' bones have yet to turn cold. And I haven't even figured out how to exact my revenge. What face do I have to talk about romance? Love between a man and a woman is an extravagant thing to me now. Yin Yang's eyes suddenly glinted with a bloody light. I'll go out for a while. Lao Mei said, I'll go with young master. There's no need. Marquis Yin will be back soon. Lao Mei suddenly said, seeing that Yin Yang was about to step out of the house. Oh. Yin Yang responded with an oh and disappeared. Sigh. Lao Mei realized that other than sighing, there was nothing else he could do. He had followed Marquis Yin for 10 years. But he never knew when Marquis Yin had gotten married, or when he had a son. It was only 3 years ago when he brought Yin Yang back, and said that he was his son. Lao Mei was dumbfounded then. Then, he stayed in Tiantang City, and became the butler for 3 years. Of course, what baffled Lao Mei even more was that Marquis Yin had left after a month, after bringing Yin Yang home. There had been no news of him for 3 years. It was like he had disappeared. He did not care about his son at all. Yin Yang, the son, did not seem to care about his father's departure either. He did not care. Lao Mei had never seen a second pair of such a strange father-son relationship in his life. This young master had been normal for the first 2 years. Other than disappearing for a few months, only 2 or 3 times a year, everything else was normal. However, this year, he was completely different from before. Yin Yang walked with a flutter in his purple robe. His handsome face drew sidelong glances from the passers-by. Some young ladies stole a glance at him and blushed. He did not walk quickly. His steps were relaxed, exuding an indifference that came from his bones. His face was rosy, his demeanor calm. Coming out of the residence of Yin, he took a few turns and walked to the main street in the city, heading towards Tiantang Square. In front of the Heroic Spirit Pavilion, there were still countless people paying their respects. The smell of incense and candles almost filled the air. Yin Yang followed the crowd and walked to the tombstone. Standing still, he lit the candles and held them in his hands, bowing respectfully to the ground. He did not get up for a long time. Brothers, please bless me to find the clues of my enemy soon and take my revenge. Brothers, please bless me to find the traitors in the imperial court as soon as possible and eradicate them. Brothers, your souls are not far away. Watch as I avenge you one by one. Don't worry, brothers. As long as I, Yin Yang, am here, even if I have to go bankrupt, even if I have to plunder the world, I won't let your families suffer the slightest bit. Yin Yang straightened himself and inserted the 3 incense sticks into the incense burner. Lifting his head to look at them, he turned and left without turning back. He quickly turned into a small path and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already in a shabby slum. However, even though the people here looked poor, they were all very satisfied. Along the road, there were some white-haired old men sitting and chatting. Their weathered faces were filled with contentment and happiness. Laughter could be heard from time to time. Occasionally, 1 or 2 or 3 handicapped people could be seen. Some were missing an arm, some were missing an eye, some were missing a leg, and so on. They supported each other as they walked by the side of the road. Their scarred faces were filled with longing for life. Old Fourthly, has your family received any silver recently? Yes, I have. What about you? We have too. I really don't know which philanthropist is so generous. This silver, it makes my heart tremble. What kind of wealth does he have to be able to provide for us like this? Yes, we've received someone's kindness for no reason, but we don't know who it is. How shameful. A smile tugged at the corners of Yin Yang's lips as he walked past them slowly without looking away. Behind him, a one-armed man's voice rang out softly, catching his attention. Brothers, I've always felt. The one-armed man was obviously wary as he lowered his voice. I've always felt that this matter seems to be related to the 9 Supremes. The 9 Supremes, lords? The others exclaimed in unison. Silence. The one-armed man reminded them hurriedly. I think the 9 Supremes often distributed silver to the brothers back then. It was just that it was in the military then. Each time the troops retreated, or the injured brothers were sent back, there would always be someone chasing after them. No matter how many people returned home, each person would receive at least 500 silver taels. We only found out later that the silver taels were not from the Board of Military. Do you still remember? Of course I remember. How can we forget the kindness that the 9 lords have shown to our disabled soldiers? The people sent by the 9 Supremes to deliver the silver taels were dressed in black and masked. The one-armed man's voice trembled. That night, I ate something bad and couldn't sleep. I could vaguely see a few black shadows, dressed in black and masked, throwing the silver taels in my room. Then they disappeared. These men dressed in black. They wore the same clothes as the 9 Supremes Lord's subordinates. The rest of the men jolted abruptly and stood up, their faces brimming with excitement. Is what you're saying true? The one-armed man's voice trembled violently as tears welled up in his eyes. Do you think that the 9 Supremes aren't dead yet? His voice was filled with intense hope. His thick Adam's apple bobbed up and down as he said longingly, the 9 Supremes shouldn't be dead. Other than the 9 Supremes, who else could keep us, the disabled soldiers, from the battlefield in mind? Yin Yang sucked in a breath and left with large strides. The discussion was still going on, but there were already sobs. How I wish the 9 Supremes are still here, sob. Yin Yang sped up, crossing a few streets with no expression on his face. He came to a quiet spot and stood there, leaning his back against a dilapidated wall, taking deep breaths. There was a sharp pain in my heart. My brothers had done the same in those days. How could my brothers' responsibility and persistence be absent when it came to me? My 8 brothers' spirits in heaven must be comforted to see that I'm still carrying on their good deeds back then. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.